Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the fourth podcast episode, the MH podcast, Mohammed Hijab podcast. Today we're joined with none other than Abu Taymiyyah, Ust Abu Taymiyyah, someone who's been spending, how many years now in Medina?
Yeah, the last 4 years, yeah.
Last 4 years in Medina, mashallah, doing Islamic studies, and who has got many durus and online, many of the halaqat, lectures online. And today we want to get into some controversial questions, as we do in this very controversial podcast with Ustad Abu Taymiyyah. But before we do so, I wanted to ask just a general question, maybe starting off, about your experiences in Medina. And how have you found the journey of seeking knowledge? And what advice would you give to someone generally about seeking knowledge?
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. We have to understand that seeking knowledge is not like studying physics, okay, or like accounting, science, whatever it might be that we study in the universities, right? Engineering. These studies, this is your path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, as Imam Ahmed rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned, from the cradle to the grave, right? So it's not just like a profession that we spend a couple of years with, but rather it's a journey. The moment you go with it, it's gonna follow you up all the way up to your grave, right? And this is why even some of the scholars, subhanallah, before they passed away, they would be carrying atraf, like papers of the hadith that they were writing down, and some of them, like even on their deathbeds, a hadith would come to their minds and they would want to write it down, you see. So it's something that continues from the moment that you start that journey all the way up till your death, and it requires a lot of patience. It really, really does. Okay, I know it's a wonderful thing to be known as the da'i, to be giving da'wah to the people, and it comes with a lot of rewards as well. As the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man da'a ila al-huda kana lahu ajru mithla man tabi'ahu la yanqusu dhalika min ujurihi shay'a." Okay, whoever calls the guidance, for him is the reward of everyone that follows him up on that guidance, and he won't take anything away from him. And then look what he also said, وَمَنْ دَعَا إِلَى الضَّلَالَةِ كَانَ لَهُ إِثْمُ مَنْ تَبِعَهُ لَا يَنْقُصُ ذَلِكَ مِنْ آثَامِهِمْ شَيْئًا. And whoever calls to misguidance, for him is the sin of everyone that followed him up on that misguidance. Okay, so it can work both ways. You can maybe even call it a double-edged sword, right? So it requires time, it requires patience. مُعَاجِلُ الْأُمُورِ قَبْلَ آنِهِ قَدْ بَاءَ بِالْخُسْرَانِ مَا حِرْمَانِهِ. يعني we shouldn't try to be kind of like hasty in wanting to be out. I remember also the Sheikh of our Mashayikh, Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i, he would say, if I had the ability to take the knowledge and to pour it into your mouths the same way water and milk would be poured in your throats, then I would have done that. But the only way you're going to attain knowledge is by the scraping of the knees and the scraping of your toes, right? The scraping of the knees, the scraping of the toes, and the scraping of the elbows. So it takes time, it takes a lot of effort. I remember when we was in Damaj, the 4 years that I spent in Yemen, before that, it wasn't easy. I remember, subhanAllah, we would only get water once every 2 days. And sometimes the water wouldn't come through our taps like for days on end. Electricity would come for a couple of hours every 2 to 3 days. And then sometimes it wouldn't even happen. Okay? And we would have to like go out and, take the water and just so we can fill up our bucket. So, لا يستطاع العلم براحة الجسد, as Yahya ibn Abi Kathir mentioned. You're not going to attain knowledge with just the relaxation of the body. It requires effort. It requires, time. It also reminds me of something that Imam Shafi rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned. بقدر الكد تكتسب المعالي ومن طلب العلا سهر الليالي. In accordance to how much effort you put in, okay, this is how you're going to attain loftiness. ومن طلب العلا سهر الليالي ومن رام العلا من غير كد أضاع العمر في طلب المحال. And whoever doesn't put that effort in, he's just going to be wasting his time. He's going to be chasing the impossible. تروم العزة ثم تنام ليلا يغوص البحر من طلب اللآلي. Okay, you want to become honored, you want a high position while you sleep at night. And then he gives the example of somebody who's ready to risk his life. He dives into the sea to get the pearls from under the sea, right? What kind of risk would we be willing to take to do something like that? So Yemen, like, I remember when I first got to Medina, a brother called Sheikh Abdul Razak Al-Khalafi, who I benefited from in the Hanbali fiqh, he took me into the dorms. And he said to me, Abu Taymiyyah, you're going to struggle with these dorms. Huh? And I said to him, Subhanallah, akhi, we got running water. We got running electricity. We didn't even have that in Yemen. Okay? So sometimes, you know, going out, being in places like Egypt, Mauritania, but Yemen, obviously now there's a lot of issues in Yemen. You're going to have to put a lot of effort in. Okay? And that which we come out with, wallah, is absolutely nothing to what the Salaf came out with, having gone through all of that difficulties. But anyways, this is, I don't want to prolong it. But I've got a video on my YouTube channel. It's called He Drank His Urine 6 times. This was the case of some of the people of the past. They would drink their urine because they would, out of necessity. Because they're walking in the desert, they don't have no water, they don't have anything.
So that's very, subhanAllah, motivating. I think a lot of people will take a lot of benefit and gems from that, especially those who live in, you know, modern day societies where everything's fast, everything is quick, everything is accessible. And so Jazakumullah khairan for that. That's very insightful. What I want to move on to now is perhaps what's on a lot of people's mind, in many ways could be seen as the elephant in the room, which is there's a lot of kind of refutations, you want to call it that you were involved in or that you were associated with, maybe not directly involved in yourself. Some time ago you came to Speaker's Corner, there was some kind of drama between you and Adnan Rashid, and it was surrounding the case of Haitham al-Haddad and a particular video that came out. Basically the Shia, he went to that Dawah man put out, which is that he went to a place where he was discussing with the Shia and stuff like that, and then, you know, from that there was all kinds of conclusions that were made on his character. I just want to ask you a direct question. Were you involved in that? Were you part of the backing that Dawah man had for that video? Do you agree with that? Do you endorse that? Do you think that that was something which was fair, that was said about Sheikh Haitham al-Haddad, or do you think that that's something that maybe shouldn't have been done?
So there's a number of things that we can actually mention with regards to that, right? Because you asked a couple of questions as well. Did he have the backing of myself before he made the video? Okay? Or was it just after? And so on and so forth, right? Firstly, I personally didn't know about the video till after it came out. I was hearing about a video that's going to be released. Okay? Did I know about it beforehand? Then that's not correct. And I know now, obviously, because of a video that went out between him and Sajid, I didn't even know they were making that video. But it comes across there that the team was consulted, and also my name was mentioned in good light by both of the brothers. So one could easily think that I kind of authorized it, which I didn't. Okay, but there is mistakes that I did, and I'm not just gonna like throw somebody under the bus and kind of free myself and just, you know, run away from the situation. There is mistakes that I did that I really, really, really regret. And I began to think more about it when I got to Medina. Because when there is a lot of battles taking place and you're on the ground, it's like a war zone, right? And sometimes it doesn't really allow you to just think outside of the box. But when you kind of like just step out, it allows you to look at things in a better perspective. Okay? So, and of course that incident with Adnan Rashid happened just before I went to Medina. Like I wasn't even planning to go to Hyde Park. Me and my cousin Siraj, I think you know him, right? We happened to be eating in Edgware Road. I was, you know, going to be leaving very soon, so I want to spend some good time with one of my favorite cousins, right? So he follows Ali Dawah on Snapchat. So he saw Ali Dawah and he goes, oh, let's just go. And I've never been there before. I've never ever been there before. So we're going to come on to that later anyways, inshallah ta'ala, exactly what happened. Okay. Just remind me, just in case I forget. So when I got to Medina, I just really just started thinking about this issue more. Some brothers did come up to me in a very nice way and they said, you know, I just want you to, you know, maybe just think about everything that you did. You know, was it a good thing? Was it not? So that got my thinking going, you know. Until one day, I think this was like 2-3 weeks in, a brother called Umar, who is the son-in-law of Dr. Haitham, right, came up to me. I was sitting in the haram, I was reading a hadith, and I didn't know who he was. And he basically pointed out that incident, right? And he mentioned the other incident as well about the student loans that when we went to Kuwait. So we had discussions on a number of things, and there's no need for me to mention now because al-majalisu bil-amana. But I'm going to mention this issue, this one issue. The moment he brought up Dr. Haitham, I said to him, look, وَإِنِّي لَأَرْجُو أَنْ أَلْقَى اللَّهَ تَعَالَى وَلَيْسَ أَحَدٌ مِّنْكُمْ يَطْلُبُنِي بِمَظْلِمَةٍ فِي دَمٍ وَلَا مَالٍ. What the Messenger ﷺ mentioned when they asked him that to put down the prices after everything started becoming inflated, right? So he said this to them, I want to meet Allah Azza wa Jal. This is what the Messenger ﷺ is saying, right? And none of you guys are asking me, or none of you guys are making a complaint against me with regards to blood money, with regards to the wealth of the people, and so on and so forth. And a'rad, the people's honors, come under this as well, right? And ever since then, I just started thinking about it. I promised him that I'm going to look into the issue. This is right at the beginning, exactly like 4 years ago. That I'm going to look into it. I'm going to research the issue. And to be very honest with you, I kind of just got very occupied. And but the thing just started, you know, every now and again, it would just come back to life again. Like in the haram, being in the haram, and just seeing the different zuwar, like the different tourists, those who come for Umrah and Hajj. SubhanAllah, I actually began to realize how powerful YouTube is. I don't think I realized it till after I actually got to Medina, because Medina is like a central point for Muslims to come, right? And people watch you online. And the repercussions, I didn't see how bad it was till I actually got there with certain things. Not just necessarily my issue, but other things that happen and whatever have you, right? So, of course, it's from Allah Azza wa Jal, you know, videos going out and getting views and reaching different parts of the world. So, every now and again, I would see people from around the world coming up to me, stopping me, many of them really just appreciating, but some people, they would just point this issue out. So, it's like Allah Azza wa Jal was keeping this issue fresh in my mind and to not just sleep on it. And so 2 years in, it kind of like just went like that. Once the 2-year mark went by, I started taking this issue much, much more seriously. Like brothers are bringing their arguments about that specific incident. I'm not speaking about Dr. Haitham al-Haddad, having gone to the Shia for the purpose of uniting with them. Okay. And was that the case? Was that not the case? And everybody brings me their arguments. You have those who are pro and those who are against it, right? And I really just started taking this issue much more seriously. Because, akhi, think about it for a moment. Wallahi, I don't think any of us want to have, the oppression on our backs. Mm-hmm. Something very powerful that Al-Layth ibn Sa'd mentioned about Abdullah ibn Umar. A man wrote a letter to him. This is in Sirah Alam al-Nubala. He asked him, "Aniktub ilayya al-ilma kullah." Send me all of knowledge. It's a big question, right? Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma responded back and he said, "Inna al-ilma kathir." Knowledge is too vast. ولكن, but إن استطعت أن تلقى الله تعالى خفيف الظهر من دماء الناس if you are able to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're not carrying the burden of having taken lives, okay, خَمِيصَ الْبَطْنِ عَنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, and your stomach is void from the wealth of the people, كَافَ اللِّسَانِ عَنْ أَعْرَاضِهِمْ, and you've managed to refrain your tongue from the honor of people, right? لَازِمًا لِجَمَاعَةِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَفَعَلْ, and you're sticking to the jama'ah, the congregation of the Muslims, then do so. Akhi, he could have talked to him about anything. Look what he's actually advising him about. Okay? And that's not a light matter. It really, really isn't a light matter. And so you're studying at the same time, you know the evidences about dhulm, about oppression, having said something that you shouldn't have said. Because, akhi, just because somebody is wrong in something, it doesn't justify you now to start pinning up against them everything else. Okay? Refutations are part of our religion. Okay? It's something that the Sharia calls to, it's something that is mentioned in a hadith, it's something that the Messenger ﷺ done, the companions done it, those who came after them, they all did it. Okay? And even Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions some very, very, very powerful statements. He says, أئمة أهل البدع أضر على الأمة من أهل الذنوب. The callers to innovation, their scholars, are more dangerous upon the ummah than the people of dhunub, the people who sin. He then says, وَلِذَا أَمَرَ النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بقتل الخوارج ونهى عن قتل الولاة الظلمة. This is why the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم commanded to kill the Khawarij, the Kharijites. That's how they translate, right? Or is there any other word that you guys use? Huh? He commanded that they are killed, but he said not to kill the oppressive rulers. This is Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. In another place he says, and this also you can find it in Majmu' al-Fatawa. He says, وَإِذَا كَانَ الْمُتَكَلِّمُ دَاعِيًا إِلَى بِدْعَةٍ. If the one who's speaking is calling the people to innovation, okay, فَإِنَّ أَمْرُهُ يَجِبُ أَنْ يُبَيَّنْ. It is a must that his situation is clarified to the people. Okay, and then he goes on to say, وَدَفْعُ ضَرِّهِ أَعْظَمُ. Removing his harms is more better, more greater, okay, than removing the harm of a highway bandit. قاطع الطريق. Okay, like for example, Mohammed, let's be honest here. If you see a pedophile who's going to do something to our kids, right, you're going to warn the people from him, right? Am I wrong for saying that? And this is something related to the integrity of our loved ones and whatever have you. And likewise, if someone's going to steal something from you, you're going to warn that person. And ad-deen, the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is far greater than this.
Yep.
Having said that, when rebuking, it requires a lot of hikmah. Okay? And this is exactly what Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned. He goes, al-hikmatu هي فعل ما ينبغي على الوجه الذي ينبغي وفي الوقت الذي ينبغي. It is to do that which is appropriate and befitting. Okay? In a manner that is befitting, and also the time has to be befitting as well. And then he mentions 3 pillars. First pillar that he mentions is ilm. It has to be done with knowledge. And then he also mentions al-hilmu wal-anat. And then he mentions the 3 opposites. And I'm going to come on to that. So al-ilm, okay, it has to be done with knowledge. You can't just basically say something about someone that is not true.
Are you connecting this with Dr. Haitham Haddad?
Yeah, I'm going to come on to that.
Okay.
I'm going to come on to that, right? It's important that we mention this because it's a taboo topic, and I believe sometimes there's 2 extremes on this matter, right? So al-ilm, it has to be done with knowledge. Then you have also al-hilm, which basically means not acting on emotions. Someone's upset you and he's angered you, and يعني هو
I mean, they usually translate it as forbearance.
Okay, forbearance. يعني ضبط النفس عند هيجان الطبع. Okay, like somebody's angered, you don't rush to kind of like punishing him and holding him to account. And then ana is to just think about things like slowly, not to be hasty and rushing into it. And I believe that I actually was very hasty, just listening to one side and seeing some parts of some videos cut up. And I take the full blame for that.
You're talking about Sheikh Haitham Haddad?
Yeah, Dr. Haitham al-Haddad's issue about the Shia. And speak more about it in a bit, inshallah ta'ala.
Okay.
Okay. And even Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he said something very powerful. He said, لا تكونوا عجلا مذايع بذرا. Do not be individuals who are hasty, who rush to announcing things, right? Okay. And unveiling the secrets and of the discussions that happen and so on and so forth. So just rushing into things, you're in need of al-ana. And this is something that Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that Allah really loves when he was speaking to Ashaj Abdul Qais, right? إِنَّ فِيكَ خَصْلَتَيْنِ يُحِبُّهُمُ اللَّهُ الْحِلْمُ وَالْأَنَاتِ. And he mentioned the three opposite things of that. And he said al-jahl, ignorance, al-taysh, unthoughtfulness. I think that's how they translate it, right? And al-ajala, hastiness. So going back to what I was saying, even if the guy is a kafir, like you refute atheists all the time, right? And you speak about the Christians. And I'm just bringing the worst example here. If that Christian believes that Jesus is the Son of God, you are not allowed to say about him, Islamically speaking, and this is the fairness that our religion came with, that Uzair is the Son of God. You can't say about the individual which has no reality whatsoever. Okay, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, he says, فَلَا يَحِلُّ لِأَحَدٍ يَظْلِمَ أَحَدًا وَلَوْ كَانَ كَافِرًا. It's not lawful for you to oppress any individual, even if the guy is a kafir. And then he mentioned the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَى لَا تَعْدِلُوا اِعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Be fair. Don't let the hate that you have for people entice you to being unjust. Even if the guy is a Shiite, right? He's cursing Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And I know, what you call it, some of them might have tuqya, whatever have you, right? But because he's now cursing Muawiyah, you can't just pin against that individual that he cursed Abu Bakr and Umar as well. Let alone anyone else who is less in danger than the Shiites and the Christians, like the Ikhwanis. Even if the guy's an Ikhwani, the guy is a Sufi, Diobandi, wherever, Brelvi. Sometimes you find that Diobandis are refuting the Brelvis. And the other way around, and this group is refuting that group. Salafi might be refuting that. You cannot say about that individual which he hasn't done. If you're going to rebuke him for what he said or what he's done. Okay? And so I just feel like that issue about the Shiite was a bit of that kind. So let me just quickly mention exactly
of what kind.
It wasn't fair at all. It was totally unjust. So as I'm coming up to the 2 years, it's really bothering me now, right?
Why did you, before you continue with that, sorry, what made you come to that conclusion now? I mean,
Jamil.
What was the thing? Because, so, from what I understand so far in the picture, you didn't endorse it in the beginning, but then you kind of looked into it and thought, actually, this seems like a cut and paste job maybe, or it's being meshed together in a way which is not favourable, makes it look something that it's not. So, what exactly about it do you think is unfair about it?
Okay, I'm going to come on to that. So now the last 2 years, every now and again, I think about it. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to help me deal with this issue in the best and most correct way, right? Praying istikhara. I've even went to the Kaaba. Okay? And then 1 year before that, I dropped a message to Dr. Haitham on his WhatsApp. I got the number and I dropped a message to him about the issue of tabdi', calling him an innovator, calling him an ikhwani, right? I never did that. Just because a friend of mine, okay, if your associates, they do something, it's not fair again for you to be painted with the same brush. I just wanted to claim myself with him. And I clearly and explicitly said to the Sheikh, I do not agree with the stances that you take and the views that you have. And I'm not going to go into the other things that we discussed, and because it's not right. That I discussed this right now, right? I said I do not agree with you, but I did not say that. Okay, if Abdurrahman's done tabdi' on you, I've got nothing to do with that. You see what I'm saying?
Do you know anyone else other than in the group other than Abdurrahman Hassan that pronounced that ruling on him?
That called him an innovator? Let's be more specific. Maybe calling an ikhwani, right? So you have to understand that.
But it's synonymous for example, Abdurrahman Hassan, he considers that the Ikhwan are a deviant sect, and so therefore So it's synonymous. Ikhwan, innovator, the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, like, just so we're clear exactly what we're saying in it, you know. But if you call somebody an ikhwani, that's tabdi'. You've declared that individual to be an innovator.
If you think that ikhwan are
or
deviant sect.
Sahih.
Which there is. I mean, you wouldn't say that there's ijma' on that at all.
With regards to
calling the ikhwan a deviant sect. For example, Ibn Jibreen, he says they're not a sect. Sheikh Ibn Jibreen, etc. Many people say they're firqa siyasiyya. They're not really a sect in that sense. The Islamic definition of a sect.
Wallahi, the thing is, if we're going to say ijma', I would have to know what every single scholar said.
Exactly.
No, I don't think I've done ittila', like I haven't collected every single scholar, because ijma' means that every scholar in that time, he has to agree and take a position of a certain...
Yeah, even more problematic. I was reading, sorry to cut you off, this might be a tangent, but I was reading Minhaj al-Sunnah.
Okay.
And Ibn Taymiyyah was talking about who's included in ijma'. And what makes it more difficult is that he actually includes the Mu'tazila in there. So, you know, so it's going to be difficult to get ijma'.
No, but akhi, it's not a condition. In order for a group to be misguided, you don't always, need an ijma' for everything, in order for hukm to take place, right? Like, not
for it to be mulzam.
For not even mulzam. I'm just speaking about if we clearly establish that this sect is totally misguided, do I really need an ijma' before an hukm can be made by a scholar?
Possibly.
Not really, akhi.
For it to be mulzam.
No, I'm not talking about I'm going to impose this on you and you have to take this.
Yeah.
I'm not basically saying that you have to take my view or that
sheikh
of the view. If the sheikh says, and there's even if there's one person with him, or even if there's no one, but al-ibra to be a dalil, you know, what really matters is the evidences that are being brought forward, right? But I can't enforce it upon you to say you have to take this, and if you don't take that, you're an innovator.
Agreed. But perfect.
من لم يبدع المبتدع فهو مبتدع.
That is tabdi'at tasalsuli.
Yeah, this is it's unacceptable. Yeah, it's unacceptable.
But what I was going to say was that this point of going back to, it's clear, like, let's be honest, that they considered him an innovator, someone who's not Sunni. He said that in the park. He came in and he said that I don't believe he's a Sunni, blah blah blah. He made that kind of articulation. So you're saying you don't have anything to do with that.
Like, akhi, you have to understand, there is a difference between declaring somebody an innovator and one having fallen into innovation. This is why Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah says, ليس كل من وقع في كفر فهو كافر. وليس كل من وقع في بدعة فهو مبتدع. Not everyone that falls into kufr, forget about bid'ah.
Right.
You can't call him a kafir. There's mawani', there's preventatives, and there's conditions. And not everybody that falls into bid'ah can you call him a mubtadi'.
Okay.
That tabdi', we need to really just differentiate between the two. Okay. I might say, akhi, this person has these bid'ah acts with him, these innovations with him. That doesn't mean that I'm calling him an innovator. Tabdi' is something huge.
Right.
Okay. This is not a light matter. You see what I'm saying?
So you're saying
they said al-qada, يعني the Hanabila, they say al-qada is أعلى درجة من الفتوى. So for you now, you have to understand, like, these kind of things are normally done in a court case.
Yeah.
And you get held to account for, you know, compensations go out because of what you say actually about a person when it comes to taking him out or keeping him in. Right?
Do you think that, so therefore, do you think that was a mistake on their behalf to make that kind of pronouncement?
I'm saying this is an issue that none of us should be speaking about.
Okay.
It's an issue that needs to be taken to the scholars.
Okay.
وإذا جاءهم أمر من الأمن أو الخوف أذاعوا به ولو ردوه إلى الرسول وإلى أولي الأمر منهم. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. These are big affairs that doesn't go back to myself, yourself, these students of knowledge who are in the UK, even in the West. This is an issue. Leave it to the scholars. This is their job.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
that's what should have happened.
That's what should have happened, and I said it to both of them as well.
Right. And even if, let's be fair, if they took it to the scholars and the scholars pronounced tabdi'ah, it's not غير ملزم. It's not. We have to follow that scholar now. They have a right to say that, but that they have a right to do nakhl of it, right?
If you like, when you keep saying غير ملزم, do you mean by, okay, he's an innovator now, right? And because he's an innovator, all of you guys have to follow me on this, and if you don't follow me on this, then you guys have got issues. Of course, this is هذا خطأ. هذا خطأ.
Yeah.
Because sometimes a person, it might not necessarily become clear to him.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of like things attached, a lot of strings attached, and I don't think we can go through an hour just discussing
of course.
A tabdi' and takfir. Books have been written on it.
Yeah.
The scholars have spoken about it extensively.
Yeah.
And it's an academic discussion that you need to go back to his books.
Yeah,
like
of
I'm talking about the viewer, not necessarily yourself. Okay.
I do as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
But yeah, so your position now is clear. I feel like you're saying that was something that you think was not the right thing to have done. It should have
so
gone
let
to
me
this
actually explain now how I actually came to this point. Okay. So there's like 1 year left now, right? Till this very moment, right? I dropped him a message and I said, Akhi, I don't make tabdi'.
Right.
But he said, look, Akhi, I disagree with Dr. Haytham's positions, but Akhi, what you guys done, yeah, that was oppression.
Wow.
I remember he said the ayah to me as well. ألا يظن أولئك أنهم مبعوثون
SubhanAllah.
ليوم عظيم يوم يقوم الناس لرب العالمين. And do they not think that they're gonna stand in front of their laws, that they're gonna be resurrected on يوم القيامة عفوا. ليوم عظيم, to a great day, the day when the people are gonna be standing in front of their laws, right? And wallahi, akhi, at that moment, it put shivers down my back, akhi. And he basically said to me, akhi, go check the video. I wasn't aware of this video.
Yeah, I
don't know, they put a video
Shia
up.
video.
Huh?
The Shia one.
The whole, I think it was like a 40-minute.
Yeah, when he was going to debate the Shia, and then they said that he was going to unite with them.
Yeah.
That one.
So yeah, that one. It's I think after that they put it out as the counter part 2.
Oh, is it? I didn't see.
Yeah, it's like a 40-minute one. They put English subtitles and everything as well, and they put it out. If I'm not wrong, I don't think I've ever seen that video before. Akhi, that night I watched it 8 times. And I mentioned it with John as well. Like when I got to that 6th or 7th time,
they had like what do you call it?
a banner.
A banner saying "Hawar kada kada" or something.
It was about uni. Yeah. And akhi, wallahi, the 6th or 7th time, I burst down into tears. I broke down into tears, and I even went to the Kaaba after that. Just ask Allah, because now, akhi, I'm in a situation now, because I said something publicly in the Adnan Rashid debate, which we're gonna come on to in a minute, yeah. And I defended that stance,
right?
Okay, and I also spread it, and there was many times that I justified it now, right? And so many, akhi, how many people watched that video?
Don't know.
It's a good 250,000.
Really?
Both of them, yeah. Imran's video and Adnan Rashid's video as well. Yeah, that video gave me a lot of publicity as well. So
no, but now you're saying that Adnan was right, practically for all intents and purposes.
But he discussed. Well, we're gonna come into that.
Yeah.
I promise, we're gonna come into that. Okay, so I'm in a position now. I have to clarify this publicly.
Yeah.
Because even as Ibn Taymiyyah mentions that whatever is done privately, you deal with it privately, and whatever is done publicly, you have to deal with it publicly, right? As Allah mentions, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ تَابُوا وَأَصْلَحُوا وَبَيَّنُوا, right? Because I did it publicly now, I have to at least make sure that to the best of my ability, I can get that message across to all these people who may have taken out from that video that what I was saying was correct. Yeah. If I come to the conclusion that this is wrong.
So are you saying, because you've quoted the verse, فَأُولَٰئِكَ أَتُوبُ عَلَيْهِمْ وَأَنَا تَوَرَّأْ. So are you making repentance publicly on this matter?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
What am I making this video for?
Yeah.
The reason I'm making this video is I have to like clarify this. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so when he said that to me and I watched that video that very night, and this is in front of the Kaaba, right? Akhi, man, something has to be done, right? And obviously at that time all these ayat are going through your head, you know, your friends, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ, because at the end of the day, akhi, even though I'm close to them, akhi, he's not going to come and stand in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla, defend my cause. You see what I'm saying? As Allah mentions, وَكُلُّهُمْ آتِي يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ فَرْدًا. Every person is going to come by himself. And the day when the brother is going to run away from his brother and mother and so on and so forth, right? And just as I defended my brothers in the past, and they loved for me to defend them, it's important that someone else should get that as well. You see what I'm saying? Just like as you love to be defended, I'm sure you'll accept as well that the defense is against you now. So akhi, for the last month, wallahi, because I have a little studio in my flat now as well, I've been thinking about how can I, really just get this out, how can I deal with it? and then these two videos came out, and it's just subhanallah, man, and it just happened to happen, you know. So yeah, so where are we at the moment?
So you're at the point where we're talking about you watched the video 7-8 times, and you came to a conclusion that was dhulm to be associated with that and to defend that position.
Yeah. Because like I said, you know, with Adnan Rashid,
yeah, that discussion with him,
that I had with Adnan Rashid, I stood by that position, and I even said that this has caused confusion and everything of what he was doing. And I've heard some of the arguments as well that the brothers bring, that he woke up that day to go and unite with the Shia. Okay, this is what the whole hiwar, the whole conversation was about. When I went back to the video, akhi, the fact that as soon as they let him speak, akhi, he's blasting what's in their books and everything, and he keeps on repeating, in kunna nuridu at-taqarub. If we're going to unite, فلا بد أن نعالج العقيدة. We have to what? Treat and cure the aqidah. Because everything runs on aqidah. It goes dual, you know, countries are built on aqidah. And I heard some of the arguments that the brothers mentioned as well, that okay, طيب, what are they going to leave? Like, are they going to leave just cursing the companions and everything else? So even if they leave off some of these points, they're still Shiites, right? They're still Shiites. So he's going to unite with them, even though they're Shiites, having left off some of these points that are quite major. But at the end of the day, akhi, I kind of think that's, how can I put this, akhi, is,
I mean, the Quran says تعالوا لكلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم ألا نعبد الله. It doesn't mention all the things that, you know, that are
no,
there.
of course, even when you go into a debate now,
right,
when you go into a debate,
you're
there is
أرض مشتركة. You're
there's
common
things,
ground,
okay, خلاص, get rid of this, then we'll have another discussion.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Abdul Hakim at the time mentioned to me that this is something that Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah mentioned.
Right.
I tried to find it until now, I haven't found it, and I'm still looking for it. But this is what he quoted to me at the time. Okay, so I believe he was kind of like just really being fair. Yeah. You know, when he said that to me, he was just really being fair. And so yeah, when I was in Hyde Park, I didn't even go there to debate anyone. That's the first time I've ever been to Hyde Park. I live in Leicester. Like I mentioned, I went there to have lunch with my cousin, and because he follows Ali Dawah, because let's go to the park as well. You know, let's go to Hyde Park. So I go there, and akhi, the funny thing is, Ali Dawah was actually debating with one of these kafir guys who, maybe you know him. He's a black African guy who was trying to make the religion of Islam look very barbaric. Okay, and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is really bloodthirsty to take lives and whatever have you. So Ali Dawah is debating him. So when I get there, I'm listening, right? And I'm just like really wanting to just, you know, say something to this guy. So Ali Dawah goes, akhi, you know what? I don't know the verse, speak to him. So I'm basically throwing ayat at this guy, verse to this guy, right? And the guy is basically getting to the point he can't answer to some of the ayat, the verses. You're saying that the religion is barbaric and it forces people. So I just gave you all the ayat. It's not happening, right? While this is happening, Adnan Rashid calls me because I want to speak to you. And me at that point, like, I've heard good things about Adnan Rashid. I don't know him like that. John Fontaine said some good things about him, that they've traveled together. And the only time that I know Adnan Rashid is from the debate. From the debate that Abdurrahman Hassan, when he was debating Asar Rashid, I was sitting there, right? Adnan Rashid is messaging me in a very, very respectful way. Okay? I know that I'm not his sheikh.
Yeah, I know. And
I'm not his teacher.
He does that with everyone.
Yeah. So, but the point is, he's being very respectful.
Yeah, that's how he is.
Yeah. So that's the only thing that I've ever known of him. So he's saying, Sheikh Abu Taymiyyah, make sure you say this. Make sure this gets to him. I've never seen him from then. So all my relationship with him is a very respectful relationship.
He does that with people that he friends.
Yeah, and that's a very respectful way to speak to someone. Even I'm not his teacher, akhi.
Yeah, of course not.
I've never taught him anything. Like, he's older than me and everything, right? So the point in all of this is, you're speaking in a very respectful way. That's all I've ever known of you. You call me to the park, like, and I can see him, he's very, very angry. very upset. And I don't understand why he's upset, why he's screwing, until we actually start the
To
discussion.
be honest, I didn't watch the whole discussion.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Akhi, it's
but
a-
I watched
yeah.
bits of it, like highlights and stuff. But the gist of it, from what I understand, is that basically, like you said, you were defending that position, and he was not. He was saying
Yeah, he was upset. He was
upset with that.
angry and
tabdiya on the method of tabdiya.
yeah. No, he wasn't even tabdiya. He was basically saying we went from one topic to another topic and no topics. It wasn't like a healthy way of having a discussion.
Okay.
That's why even clearly in the video I keep saying to him, "Akhi, let's go sit there. Let's go sit outside. See the guy's angry." And the Mr. And what did he say? If you're standing up and you're angry, go and sit down. If you're sitting down, go lie down, right? So and akhi, I wasn't trying to disrespect him. I wasn't being horrible towards him. I can see why he's upset. Because
How about this? How about that? We'll put
yeah.
all of that behind us.
yeah.
Seriously, no, I mean,
Akhi Mohammed, I don't, wallahi, me and Adnan Rashid, until that debate, which was I think maybe like 2 weeks before, or maybe like 3 weeks before our discussion in Hyde Park, right?
I wouldn't even call it a
We've
debate.
never.
It was just
that wasn't a
argument.
debate, akhi.
Argument.
It was just an argument, and yeah.
And you know, like what I would put to you now on this issue with Adnan Rashid is, it seems like you and him are on the same page in the sense that you both believe in the same things, and you're agreeing that that video shouldn't be put out, which I think was the main point that he was trying
Let me
to
make this very crystally clear.
Right.
I'm speaking about that point
Yeah.
of Dr. Haitham.
Yeah.
I think it was basically just trying too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what said about him, like there's other things that if you wanted to refute him, that you could refute him on. But that point, I believe he was wrong.
And you'd have to get someone on his level, to be fair.
Yeah, that's something,
otherwise
yeah.
it would just, I mean, from an end user perspective, people would just feel like, I mean, I'm happy somewhat. I personally want to hear a second opinion on the student loan issue, or on
No, the
on
student
this
loan,
issue.
I'm not
I'm
even
sure
talking about
most
the student
people-
loan. The student loan,
yeah, or
yes.
the voting issue,
Yeah,
whatever it is
yeah.
that position's controversial with.
Yeah.
But it's got to be someone, because even if, say, for example, let's say that people have the knowledge and they're younger than him. Yeah, let's just agree. It's just not going to be taken seriously from the end user. So if someone's on his level, right, and comes out and his age and his experience or whatever, and has the tools that he has and provides an academic refutational response, I'll listen to it. You know what I mean?
No, but don't you think, akhi, that's a problem with the listener himself, like in the sense where, and of course, this is what academia does to the people, right? PhD, masters, baccalaureus. as they say in
I'm
Arabic.
not even mentioning, like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about as qualifications. I'm thinking more about in the years in the industry. Like, how long have you studied for? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're a person, I'm not trying to take a dig at anyone. I'm not obviously talking about anyone in particular, but if you're a person that has barely grappled with the Arabic language and doesn't know how to string a sentence together, or don't know how to speak in the Arabic language, and hasn't memorized the Quran, and so on and so on, and they don't have ilm al-ala, they don't have it, or they have it on a very superficial level, and then you go out and attack, Sheikh Haitham Haddad or something. Forget about Sheikh Haitham Haddad, Al-Qaradawi, or who's got much more controversial opinions, or Hamza Yusuf, who's got some controversial opinions, especially. You're not gonna be accepted, and the reason why is just because the guy's age, the guy's credentials, the guy's he's been in the game longer than you have, and it's not like for like, if that makes sense. It's not like for like. So that's what we, especially on matters where you need umq, you need more than sathi, more than superficial knowledge. I think that's just my view on it. I might be wrong, but I think a lot of people from the feedback I've been getting is they would kind of look in that direction. You know what I mean? Someone who's a bit older, someone who's, and is not personally or emotionally invested in the issue. But look, let's focus on the positives here. I think that the positives in this situation is that people are coming towards the same kind of understanding. Look, when it comes to tabdi' and takfir, let's have a more nuanced approach.
Yeah. Otherwise, I believe it's going to be chaos.
There will be chaos.
It's going to the issue's just, you're going to find a bunch of individuals, akhi, just coming out and speaking about these very big issues, akhi, just leave it for the major scholars. Let them do their thing, akhi.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Allah has not given us that kind of responsibility.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, He hasn't. Because if He has, then we would be in big trouble if we get things wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. So now you would say that You're okay with Adnan Rashid. You're happy with. You have nothing. Nothing in your heart.
Wallahi, to be fair and honest with you,
Yeah.
I don't think I've had anything in my heart towards him. I just think the
So
way
if you
he
met
was
him now,
done.
you shake his hand and
Yeah,
hug him.
yeah, absolutely, akhi.
Maybe we can arrange.
Like
that.
I don't know what you call it. I don't watch his videos. I don't know what he says.
Wallah, it's good. It's good.
The thing is,
he's a beast in his. He's a monster in his field.
the thing is, I just haven't even like. I don't personally watch videos. That's just me.
No, but akhi,
The odd one that I get sent, I might click on it, but I'm just so
point,
kind of like.
On this point, Adnan Rashid is
Can
one of the
defend your
most.
friend, yeah.
I have to. No, he's one of the top debaters in the Muslim world right now. Yeah, and he's got stuff that you'd benefit from. I'm sure you got stuff you'd benefit from, and that's one of the biggest tragedies in these things, akhi. That both of you are working on different lines of knowledge. Like, you know, many people that be listening to you now, I'm thinking, mashallah, he's memorized many, you know, aqwal, athar, ahadith, you know, beautiful. That's something we're missing because we don't necessarily focus on these issues. But someone like Adnan Rashid, on the other hand, if you want to hear about early Christian history, if you want to hear about Indian history, if you want to hear about, you know, comparative religion, if you want to hear about, you know, all these things, I mean, akhi, and these are really like important topical things.
I've heard he's got a master's in history.
Oh yeah, he's got a master's in history degree, master's degree in history, and it's not just that. He's been in the field for very long. He's got a big collection. Actually, so I feel like that connection between you and him. I'm just giving you an example, as you know, وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرُ وَأَحْضِرَتِ الْأَنفُسُ الشُّحَّ, as the Quran says, you know. It would produce a lot more benefit for the ummah. Like the fact that now you're not seeing face to face and there's.
Akhi, let me make this clear. Not face to face. Akhi, I actually dropped him a number of messages, if I'm not mistaken, on WhatsApp. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I have nothing against him. I really don't.
Good. Khalas,
I did try to come to a solution with both parties. Okay, about taking down the videos, because we've had this discussion before, right? That it doesn't look good. It really doesn't look good, and it didn't look like it was going to materialize. So if anything, I tried to arbitrate between both parties to take some of these videos down, and
beautiful, man. I think you could be serious.
But I can't remember the exactness of it. I really can't remember the exactness of it. He's gonna love you after this, huh?
No, I'll say good things about everyone. Like, you know, I had Abdul Rahman Hassan before you in this podcast, right? So, and everyone who's look at the comments on that video, people loved his stuff. Likewise, Dawah, man. You know,
you trying to stay niche.
I'm trying to keep everyone happy. You know, likewise, Dawah, man. You know, a lot of his videos before, because he was in the Dawah before I was, and I saw some of his videos. You know, he's in the street talking to the people, and you know, in Eid and all of these things. You know,
let's all be very fair here. What Imran's doing,
it's very, very
for
good.
the youth today, akhi. I don't know anybody who's doing that.
I'm telling you, akhi,
I've had brothers on tag.
I learned from his videos. You know, before I came in, I saw some of his videos, some Ali Dawah's videos, and mashallah, some nice techniques here, some nice videos, and the way he talked to the youth and whatever. We all learn from each other.
I've had brothers who are on tag, akhi.
Yeah.
Wallahi al-azim. This is when the penny dropped for me. A brother on tag, he's sitting on the front row in my Bulugh al-Maram class.
Yes.
And he comes up to me and he goes, Ustad, I need to leave. It's like, why? Because I'm on tag, I have to be home at.
Subhanallah.
You see what I'm saying?
So he's getting through to people.
So he's getting like a lot of these brothers into the masjid. Some are becoming tullab, they're going out seeking knowledge abroad and everything. Akhi, it's very unprecedented.
Wouldn't it be fantastic if like, you know, if everyone just focuses on what they're really like, if you're a manager of a football team and someone's a really great striker.
I remember you used this example in Saudi. How you going?
Yeah, I told you this before. Someone's a really good striker. I mean, and someone says, okay, you're a great striker, come here and be a defender. Do you know what I mean? It's the comparative
unbalances
advantage.
The team,
the comparative advantage is lost in a sense, right? So we know what Imran is good at. We know what Adnan Rashid is good at. We know what you're good at. We know what I'm good at. We know what everyone has advantages at. Everyone knows what I'm good at. You know, it's
a controversial video.
So you know, if we're all working like, you know, then it works beautifully. It works in a fantastic way. And no one's trying to take away from anyone else, right? No one's and you know, we're happy.
You, like I'm gonna maybe look into this, right? Adnan Rashid, I know he has a YouTube channel and everything.
Yes.
I've kind of haven't followed him on what he knows and what he doesn't know. But
inshallah,
I don't know much about him. Like I can't, you know, say anything bad about him.
Yes.
With regards to that, like the only one that I've kind of like really just spoken about to was John Fontaine.
Yes.
When we did the podcast. And
we know what John Fontaine's good at, right?
Yeah.
Let's not leave anyone out here.
Yeah. And he says some good things about him. I can't speak bad about a person if I don't know him.
No, I've been traveling
See what I'm
with him.
saying?
I know him very well.
So I don't know much about him.
Look,
and al-ilm is, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala mentions, right? وَالْكَلَامُ فِي النَّاسِ يَجِبُ أَن يَكُونَ بِعِلْمٍ وَعَدْلٍ لَا بِجَهْلٍ وَظُلْمٍ كَحَالِ أهل البدع. When speaking about others, it has to be with justice and knowledge. Not with ignorance and unfairness and injustice, right?
Right.
As this is the situation of Ahl Bid'ah. He says that the people of innovation speak like that.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now let's move on to another controversy, which I've been involved in, unfortunately, and put my hand in and created my own sense of controversy. Is you also had nothing to do, as far as I know, with the leaking of the emails of Yasir Qadhi, and you want to make that clear as well, don't you?
Again, first, like I said earlier,
I'm making that video. You didn't endorse that, did you?
Look again, akhi. I was not consulted beforehand.
Right.
As I mentioned before as well, and I'll say it explicitly now, right? I only knew about a video just maybe like a day or two before it was going out, that a video is coming out. I only ended up seeing the video after it was released, just like everybody else, right? And I watched the video twice. Okay? And at the time, things are happening very, very quickly, right? And with regards to leaking of the emails,
yes,
akhi, I didn't even know that was happening.
So another question I have here is, did you have anything to do with leaking emails or publicizing the leaked material?
Akhi, like I said before, I was not consulted beforehand. I didn't even know what the content of that video was till it was actually released. Once it was released, I saw it and I watched the video. Okay. Thinking back on it now, was it a smart thing to do? Because I heard Imran's explanation now when he was doing that video with Sajid Lipham. Was it a smart thing to do? Okay, was it a wise thing to do? Because we know that a lot of doubt has now hit the people's hearts, right? And the general principle with regards to spreading doubts and telling your friends about it is what Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned, right? He said, من سمع ببدعة فلا يحكيها على جلسائه ولا يلقيها في قلوبهم. Whoever hears of an innovation, then let him not relate it to those who sit around him. Okay? And let him not hit that people's hearts with it. So look what Imam al-Dhahabi rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned, Sir A'lam an-Nubala. He says, أكثر أئمة السلف على هذا التحذير. The majority of the scholars of the Salaf. And when we use the word Salaf, okay, what we're intending by the three golden generations, not people who are breathing here today. The word has been tarnished. The moment you will use the word Salaf, people begin to think that it's referring to a group of people. Okay? We're speaking about the Sahaba, the Tabi'in, the Tabi'ut Tabi'in. Those are the Prophet ﷺ prayed, خَيْرُكُمْ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يُلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يُلُونَهُمْ. The best of you is my generation, those who came after them, right? So he says the majority of the Salaf are upon this tahdhir. Okay? Why? He says لأنهم يرون أن القلوب ضعيفة وأن الشبهة خطافة. Because the hearts are what weak. And that the shubha, the doubt, it really snatches a person. It can make you go haywire because of that doubt. It could, you see what I'm saying? So now releasing emails, and I've heard what Imran's justification is. I'm really just still trying to.
It's maslaha.
It's
Maslaha.
again, like I said, akhi.
Do you agree with this kind of ijtihad? Oh, and do you think that the ones who came to this conclusion that they are like مؤهل لهذا الاجتهاد?
What I can say is, akhi, this is one of my regrets, right? This is one of the regrets that I have. Sometimes when being involved in very controversial issues and things related to public safety and public fear, التي تعم يعني الأمة, okay, that I may have just like sought advice from the elderly. Okay, you have to understand, when this video was going on, even if I did have something to say about this video being released, akhi, we're all in our 20s. Abdurrahman at that time I think was like 27, Imran,
really,
yeah, mid-20s, myself around the same age. So we're all in our 20s. The poet, he says, and you're going to like this line of poetry, إن الأمور إذا الأحداث دبرها دون الشيوخ ترى في سيرها خللا. If there is an issue that only youngsters are pushing through or that they are carrying, okay, you're going to find a deficiency in that issue that they took onto themselves, right? So this issue now of making this video that has some very great repercussions, right? Which could put the people's hearts into doubt. And again, I'm not saying that his justification is wrong or the personal ijtihad that Abdurrahman made with regards to releasing this video. I'm not even going into that at the moment. Just thinking about it now, the least we can all agree on that many scholars should have been, consulted about leaking some of these emails where he explicitly states that having doubts about the preservation of the Quran or whatever have you. Okay, and maybe some of the elders,
maybe
even in the
maybe
UK,
a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, from my subsequent conversations, I'm not gonna say taken out of context, but are more nuanced than that. And this is why it's very important, because it can be taken out of context as well. It's more important that for someone, and this is very, like you mentioned, you alluded to it, it's like al-majalis bil-amana, and this is the qaida, right? So this is the nas. And so even for me, I was thinking, I had a discussion with you about this before. If this is the justification, you have maslaha mursala, or let's say even in this case, maslaha mulgha, versus the nas being al-amana bil-majalis bil-amana, and so on, that you have to keep private information private. If you think that the maslaha is there, but then you have a nas. So which goes before which?
I think the discussion that he was bringing was revolving around the قاعدة فإن تزاحم أو ضده تزاحم المفاسد يرتكب الأدنى من المفاسد. Me now spreading some of this information in his email is something that is bad.
Right.
Okay. And
the problem is you have nas.
Yeah, Dr. Yasir Qadhi later on bring this out subtly to the people in his lectures. Again, is something that is problematic. So he was coming from the angle of the lesser of the two evils.
The issue is we don't know what he's going to come out with. And still it could be in development.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I fully understand.
Yeah.
I fully understand. But then they use as a justification what he did with Ya'juj with Ya'juj or Ma'juj about the whole zombie thing. Again, akhi, it's not something, as you just mentioned now, it's not qat'i that he's going to do this.
It's not even that. It's not qat'i that your understanding of what he thinks is what the understanding is.
You could definitely say that.
Yeah.
You could definitely say that. But as you mentioned, there is nusus which speak about what you call it, preserving the secrets of the people. Even that narration that I mentioned earlier about Abdullah Mas'ud, لا تكونوا عجلا مذايع بذرا. بذرا إيش معناه? What does it mean? Like secrets being revealed to the people.
Right.
One thing that really touched me is this narration I'm going to mention in a moment. But before that, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إذا حدث رجل بالحديث ثم التفت فهي أمانة. If somebody tells you something and then he begins to look, you get indications that this is a secret.
Yeah, of course.
This is an amana, this is a trust. But look at this narration of Anas al-Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu, right? Anas al-Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, جاءني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنا ألعب مع الغلمان. Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم came to me while I was playing with kids. فبعثني في حاجة. And he sent me to go and do something. فأبطأت على أمي. And I ended up becoming late. My mom was waiting for me and I was late, right? So when I came home, she asked him, ما حبسك? Why was you late? He said, بعثني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في حاجة. Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم sent me to go and do something. So she asked, ما حاجته? What did he ask you to do? Anas ibn Malik responded back and he said, إنها سر. This is a secret. Look at her response. And wallah, I think every single one of us can take really just inspiration and a lesson from this, right? لا تحدثن أحدا بسر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Allah.
أخي, this is نكرة في سياق النفي التي تفيد العموم والنكرات في سياق النفي تؤدي العموم وسياق النهوي. If an indefinite now comes in a negative context in the Arabic language, it indicates generality. What do we do as Muslims? Someone told us something, the first people that we tell is what? The wives. Wives, not with an S, but we tell the wife. Akhi, here it's she said nobody. We might tell our close ones. Every friend has a friend, right? And every friend has a friend. And you know what tends to happen? Say, Wallahi, you're not going to tell anyone. And he goes to someone else. Say, Wallahi, you're not going to tell anyone. And he goes to someone else. Akhi, before you know it, that seeker is turned into Chinese whispers. While the name of Allah is being used in vain. So this is the asl. Okay, this is the asl with regards to discussions that happen in private. But that particular issue as to whether this is something that is justified because it was the lesser of the two evils.
Bring it to the scholars.
Akhi, something on this scale, thinking about it in hindsight, which involves the religion of people to be doubted. Because at that time I was told that a series of refutations or clarifications are going to be made with regards to the leaking of the emails, which didn't happen. But now, when you did that video with Ustad Abdurrahman, I don't know whether he clarified everything or he's planning to clarify. I still haven't watched it.
I mean, the thing is, like I said to you before, I've spoken to Yasir Qadhi myself, and the stuff is that he is constantly reviewing and reading and changing, and do you know what I mean? So that's why I think this is very important. If something is to be refuted publicly, it has to be said publicly. And that's why it's very dangerous for someone to challenge that which is privately, publicly, and vice versa. But I think we agree on this point. And I think at the end of the day,
again, it goes back to that same point I mentioned earlier, that sometimes it's best to take sensitive issues back to the elders, scholars.
Exactly.
Every scholar has somebody that he goes back to. Okay.
So do you think there was too much kind of ijtihad being done by the group members themselves?
Yeah, maybe so. Okay, something very powerful that I want to mention with regards to what Ibn Hazm mentioned, right? And I really just wish that in the past that I acted upon it. He said, ما أجمل الصمت في القضايا الحساسة. How beautiful is silence in very sensitive issues. And then he said, فكم شاهدنا ممن أهلكه كلامه ولم نرى قط ممن أهلكه سكوته. How often have we seen people who were destroyed because of what they say with their tongues, but we've never seen anybody who's destroyed himself because he was silent. So these issues, I just kind of sometimes wish that I may not have partook in any of them. And even now, subhanAllah, this video that I was making, I consulted a lot of the elders. There's a number of them, they don't agree, like they're not they clearly explicitly, like Sheikh Abu Sama, Sheikh Abdul Wahid Stevenson, who runs Medina College. I think you've met him before, right? And other brothers as well, but I sought their permission to maybe mention their names and they said just leave it out. Like even they clearly stated that they don't have anything to do with the da'wah of Dr. Haitham. They don't agree with his views and the stances that he's taken, while at the same time they said to me, Akhi, that was oppression, man. That thing that was said about Dr. Haitham and the way he was made to look out, it wasn't with insaf. Really wasn't with fairness. So even though they've got nothing to do, they don't have cooperation with Dr. Haitham, and they're still saying, this particular thing, and this goes back to what I mentioned earlier. If you're a real Sunni, a person who's following the truth and upon the guidance of the Salaf, if you're going to refute somebody, it has to be with ilm, and it has to be with fairness. And as Ibn al-Qayyim also mentioned, وَالْإِنصَافُ أَن تَكْتَالَ لِمُنَازِعِكَ بِالصَّاعِ الَّذِي تَكْتَالُ بِنَفْسِكَ. Justice is that you weigh your opponents with the same bowl that you weigh yourself with. Meaning you treat the people the same way you like to be treated.
I mean, the ayah is even more baligh, isn't it? كونوا قوامين لله ولو على أنفسكم أو
صحيح. Even if it is against yourselves and your parents. And well, you know what, something that really touched me was the way Ibn Taymiyyah was with his enemies. And Ibn al-Qayyim, his student, he mentions his Madaj al-Salikin, right? He said that قال بعض أصحاب ابن تيمية وددت أني لأصحابي كما أن ابن تيمية لأعدائه وخصومه. Some of his own friends mentioned, I wish I could treat my friends the same way that Ibn Taymiyyah can treat his enemies, or the same way Ibn Taymiyyah treats his enemies and his opponents. And look what Ibn al-Qayyim mentions, right?
I mean, Dhabi had a different approach, didn't he?
Imam al-Dhabi?
Yeah.
Why?
I read something in his Siyar al-Alam al-Mullah. He was saying, I wish Ibn Taymiyyah was a little bit more
Subhanallah, ajib.
Yeah, a little bit more calm with his enemies or something like this. I don't want to misquote him.
Yeah. But even, subhanAllah, look at this other incident, right? And we're just defending Ibn Taymiyyah here. Ibn al-Qayyim says, جئت Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala يوما قدس الله روحه, as he always says, right? I came to him one day مبشرا بموت أحد أكبر أعدائه. I came to give him the good news that one of his greatest enemies had just passed away. Look what his response was. فنهرني وتنكر لي ثم استرجع. He told me off. He showed his unhappiness to me giving him this good news. And then he said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Look what he did. He ran to his house. And he said to his family, today, I'm going to take the same place that your father had. Anything that you guys need from me.
If anyone said that today, it's like, yeah, no. If I did that with some of my enemies, so this guy's trying.
He goes, I'm going to take his place. Anything you guys, أنا بمكاني والدك اليوم.
See, that can be taken another way. I get what you're saying.
يا أخي, Mohammed, treat your enemies a bit, you know?
Yes.
Treat them a bit nicely. So a question I want to personally ask you now.
Please. Yeah.
Because you've brought that up and we had to be fair, right? Do you think it was a good idea to bring Dr. Yasir Qadhi, like with a lot of these doubts that are surrounding him and some of these issues that he's having, okay, and ask him some of these questions?
I think some
because now the Christians are partying. Wallah, I've seen in my own eyes. They're commenting on different videos. I've been sent screenshots. Do you think it was a good idea?
I think, to be honest, the idea for me to ask him those very specific questions was a bad idea. And I'll tell you why it's a bad idea. Not because that there should be any reason why Christians, missionaries or evangelists should be. It's a bad idea because we were talking about complex issues, and these sufahat had no idea what we were even trying to communicate. And they did distort what he was saying, and he put out a public statement saying, I don't agree with what you're saying, which is very important, by the way. He
sent that to me. I don't think I saw it.
No, he put it on Facebook. He said, whatever you're saying, I believe the Quran's preserved 100%, and you know, he refuted that. But me asking him very specific questions like, if I give you a mushaf and Hafs and Asim riwayah, would it be exactly what the Prophet ﷺ said? Now, I know he has a view which is that's not the case. That's traditional view, and it would be a mix of the, like he said on the podcast, it would be a mix of the qira'at, and which really to us is not a problematic view, right? If we iktafa bidhalik. Obviously, if you're saying there's more things that he's saying that could be problematic, we have to see that publicly, right? He hasn't come with that publicly yet. But that what he said in the podcast, was not anything near kufr. What he said in the podcast was nothing kufri or it was just something which
he was being. But you know how he
was being charitable, right? And because like he said in the thing, he's got this kind of academic hat that he puts on, right? So he put the academic hat on and he's speaking charitably, right? And speaking honestly, and that honesty and that charitable speech, which is actually, I've been looking at these masail and this or whatever, is been misconstrued by them. And it's been taken out of context by them, and they see it as a reason to celebrate, like you said, which is totally batil, false. And so I think from that angle, asking him those very technical, specific questions was totally, for me, the wrong thing to do, especially knowing that there could be a potential he could answer in that controversial way.
Because, akhi, sorry to cut you, but do you remember when I mentioned earlier what Sufyan al-Thawri said, "Man sami'a bi bid'atin," whoever hears an innovation. I think, you know, these doubts and the way he's kind of putting it forward can cause a lot of problems for the people's hearts, right?
I didn't hear any bid'ah. For me, do you see what I'm saying? So I was asking him, and obviously what he came with was something which the articulation was misconstrued by these people because he was speaking charitably, he was speaking in an academic way. I mean, and
I think he needs to kind of think about the way he puts things across them.
I think 100% that's something he'll look at. I'm 100% sure we'll all look at it. But the thing is, my platform that we're speaking from now, everything has to be watertight because who is going to be the first person that's watching it? I know people are watching it now that are going to be non-Muslims. Not only that, but enemies of Islam. Now if he's speaking in a university, right, which he's used to doing as a professor, you're not going to speak in the same way, in a polemic way or watertight way. Where you're going to speak in a little bit more relaxed way. You're going to have a more nuanced approach, which la yasluh, let's say, for this maqam, because these people are ready to take anything out of your. So I get this point, and I think everyone's learning from this. But for me, I have to take responsibility for my own actions. I shouldn't have asked Dr. Yasir Qadhi, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, I should have asked him a question specifically about something very technical to a lay audience, which I know he has opinions which I'm not going to say are controversial, but I'm going to say are anti-normative in many aspects, or some things which are not completely in line with the traditional view. You see what I mean? So I shouldn't have asked him that question, especially before he has even published anything about it. The classical view, let's call it, for the sake of it. The view of the Qurra, let's say. So that's it. And
Alhamdulillah, the fact that you admit
I think that I really regret that, actually, asking him, because not only regret on the front that I asked him that question, he answered in the way that he did, which was charitable and all that, but also because of the awaqib, the way in which it's been manipulated and distorted, the consequences of it. I personally feel like that could have been avoided if I had not asked that question, and I'll take responsibility for that.
Gee, dear.
Yeah. So on these points,
I always tell brothers this, right? And I'm the first person to advise myself. Something that Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned, right? It says, وَعَلَيْكَ بِالتَّفْصِيلِ وَالتَّبِينِ فَالْإِجْمَالُ وَالْإِطْلَاقُ دُونَ بَيَانِ قد أفسد هذا الوجود وخبط الأذهان والآراء كل زمان. Upon you is to just clarify and to elaborate. Indeed, just speaking in a very general way sometimes, what does it cause? Without clarification, what does it cause? It causes the minds of the people to become very messed up.
Yeah, and also, I mean, so some people can take what you say and distort it. But once again, it's
of course, you can't just always shut up every type of enemy that comes at you. But the most you can do is just kind of like.
But what I want the Muslims to realize about this, right, is that this is a very important point. Attacking Yasir Qadhi, Dr. Yasir Qadhi, on this point is not a good idea. Okay, attacking him is a fitna. Attacking his view that he hasn't even publicized is a fitna, because it will make them reaffirm their narratives. Oh, he's talking about preservation. Not once did he mention preservation. By the way, the word preservation, I don't think once he mentioned. He was talking about Ahram al-Qira'at. That's what he was talking about. So they've marketed it as preservation of Quran, which is different. And what I want the Muslims to realize is that, okay, if he comes out with a bahth, with a research which is against the Qur'an or whatever, there will be majal, there will be a space for refutation of that bahth in an academic way. If there's something that people disagree with. But attacking Yasir Qadhi only affirms the distorted narratives of
these Christians and atheists.
Yeah, and the Quran says, وَلَا تُشْمِتْ بِيَ الْأَعْدَاءَ وَلَا تَجْعَلْنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. You know, this is very important. When Harun came back, so Musa came back, and Harun was there. Yeah, and he said, وَلَا تُشْمِتْ بِيَ الْأَعْدَاءَ وَلَا تَجْعَلْنِي مَعَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Do not make the enemy open for me, right, in a sense.
Because you think about it as well, the way he's looked at in the West, the guy with the academics, the guy who's seen as one of the leading figures in the West, right? Yeah. If you make him look like that he has got doubts about the Quran,
why would you do that? Yeah,
it's gonna just come down like, no okay, you it's like, for example, let's just say Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, who the Ummah is strongly connected to, right? In many different parts of the world, right? If tomorrow, wal-'iyadhu billah, and may Allah Azza wa Jal save him from this, starts having doubts about, imagine the repercussion it would have. I'm not saying he's on the same level as Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, or even he has that kind of impact that he has in the West, but imagine the repercussion that will happen.
Exactly, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
So I think that we have to be very careful with these masail, and I think that people from all sides, the Quran is something which unifies جميع الملل. Not milal, sorry, the firaq. جميع firaq, right?
Except all those of the distort and they take the ayat of...
I'm talking about the firaq of Islam, not the ones of the disbelievers. Right? I'm talking about the firaq of Islam, all of them. Yeah, the Mu'tazila, this and that. Imam Ahmad, there's وَهَذَا الْقُرْآنِ الَّذِي نَحْنُ مَجْمُعُونَ عَلَيْهِ. He said to one of the Mu'tazila, this is the Quran that we are majmu' alayh. We have ijma' on this Quran. So this, if we're talking about something which everybody, all of the people, Ash'ari, Athari, Mu'tazili, all of these firaq have agreed upon what the Quran is, min fatihat al-kitab ila khatimatihi, from the beginning to the end of the book. So now these individuals want to make, this is very important, they want to make it seem as if there's khilaf fi mahiyat al-Quran. What is the Quran? We can't allow them, because for 1,400 years there's no khilaf in that. We know what the qira'at are. We know what the ahruf are. We don't know exactly what a specific notion, but we know what the idea is variation. Yeah. We know all of these things, and so for them to come in and speak in that manner, we cannot allow that. And using one of the du'at who, whatever we say, Dr. Yasir Qadhi, his status in the West, especially on academic level, is very high. So in terms of influence, whatever your view on Qadhi is, or Yasir Qadhi, Dr. Yasir, whatever your view on him is, he's still listed in, if you like, the 500 most influential Muslims in the world. He's done what he's done. So it doesn't make sense to have a harsh approach with him and a cancelling approach to him and something. It doesn't work like this. We have to have a nuanced approach, and wait for the publications and then deal with it accordingly. I think this is what we need to do. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So if he basically came out, like, I'm just asking you this, right? If he came out and some of the things had, problematic things inside of it, you wouldn't have a problem just coming out and just literally.
I would have a problem refuting what that is that he's saying. You know what I'm saying? And not me personally doing knuckle of those who have said, like, if I disagree with Dr. Yasir, I'll tell him directly. I'll say, listen, this doesn't make sense what you're saying here, or this doesn't make sense what you're saying here. I have no problem with that. Another question I wanted to ask you is about this kind of cancel culture. People cancelling people out because of association, guilty by association. So they do a tabdi'ah, maybe from their own volition, without the consultation of a scholar. And then they'll say, whoever's associated with this person who's a mubtada' is themselves a mubtada', as an innovator. And this just causes division, like unnecessary division, and it's untenable in the ummah. Having said this now, what is your stance on this? If, for example, if I were to see you, could I see you in a mosque which is potentially like a Deobandi mosque, or even a Brelvi mosque or something like that? Do you see an issue with doing khair, doing good in spaces which are not especially or specifically Salafi spaces? Or do you think that there's a more sophisticated approach to this?
I think this question can be maybe answered in two parts, right? The first part is going to the masajid of those individuals who might not supposedly be upon the sunnah, right? I wrote an article in 2015, okay? And I gave it the worst title possible. The permissibility of going to the masajid of Ahl Bid'ah, the people of innovation, right? Because what was happening at the time was there was this group of people who were blasting individuals who are trying to call to the sunnah simply because he went to this masjid, and that masjid isn't necessarily even seen as a masjid that propagates innovation. They might just have tendencies because of culture and where they came from back home, right? So the moment a brother goes there, PDFs are being put together, putting his picture and then someone else's picture, a previous speaker who came there, and in this masjid what they done and whatever have you. It was kind of becoming a bit of a pandemic.
Right.
Okay. The moment a brother goes to that masjid, he's being labeled straight away. And I put this article together like as a defense for some of our brothers who are being ripped apart. Even scholars, they were being ripped apart because of this particular issue. He went to this masjid, that means that he's associated with them, he's with them. This article that also my brother Ust Adnan Abbas Naveed, we put it together, and we translated some of the aqwal of the scholars. And in this PDF we had the likes of Sheikh Abdul Aziz bin Baz saying that's even permissible to go into a church and give da'wah there. And you also had Sheikh Rabi' al-Madkhali,
right?
Yeah, who went to the Tijani and he gave da'wah in their masjid and whatever have you.
Who was the Tijani? The Sufi?
Yeah.
Tariqa. Yeah.
So you have him doing that. I remember I also saw a fatwa of Sheikh Ubaidullah al-Jabiri, who's one of the sheikhs as well, right? He had a similar fatwa to this, and so many other scholars. I try to keep it as neutral as possible by bringing, the statements of the scholars,
right,
from both sides.
Yeah.
You had even a Sheikh Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i. A Sheikh Muqbil, if you just think about his da'wah for a moment, northern Yemen was all Shiites, right? He was by himself. He was like a Zaidi, right? Who left to Saudi Arabia, studied in university, took a master's from there, and he came back to give da'wah. Subhanallah, like, we can actually say that Jami'at al-Islamiyya, the University of Medina, they have a big fadl over the people of Yemen because they taught him. he came back, he took on the methodology of the Sunnah, right? And he started giving da'wah. And that whole province is Shiite. SubhanAllah, I even heard stories from some of my mashayikh saying that Shaykh Muqbil used to be in the masjid and he would say, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, O you who believe. And there would only be one person there. And then one time that individual came up to the Shaykh and he said to him, Shaykh, why do you keep saying Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu? Because this is what, plural, right? I'm only one person.
Maybe the angels are there.
Because I'm only by myself. So the Shaykh would go out to their marketplaces, he would be giving da'wah to them. So much so that what happened? Many people started becoming Sunnis. And the congregation started increasing. But the Shaykh would be going out to them. Even my own Shaykh called Shaykh Abdul Hamid al-Hajuri, he used to specifically, this is like maybe in the last 20 years, he used to go out to the masajid of the Shia. And he would speak about the virtues of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's a Sunni, he's got nothing to do with Shiism, right? He would grab the mic, and as soon as he grabs the mic, you can see the congregation getting worked out. They want to do something to him. He would say the reminder, inshallah ta'ala, will be after the Sunnah prayer on the virtues of Ali ibn Abi Talib. They would cool down a bit. I heard this in my own ears. And he would then start speaking about the virtues of Ali ibn Abi Talib. When Ali ibn Abi Talib said, "Man jahada harfun fil Qur'ani faqad kafar." Whoever negates a harf, a letter from the Quran, is a kafir. Also, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said, "La'an Allah man dabah li ghayri Allah." May the curse of Allah be upon the one who slaughters by other than Allah Azza wa Jal. So he's propagating the Sunnah, while at the same time he's using Ali ibn Abi Talib to speak about the issues they are involved in. You see what I'm saying? So much khair came out of it. They even said, if this is Ahlul Sunnah, then hayya hala, any time come, you know. So like akhi, this is, I don't want to say unanimous agreement from the scholars, but there is so many statements from the scholars saying.
So the idea that
we can even put the article under the video,
right? Yeah. No, but
I wrote this in 2015. Yeah.
You're saying that you're talking about people being associated with people of different understandings.
The masajid, him going there, giving a lecture, propagating whatever he needs to propagate. I'm not talking about compromising.
Yeah, you're not.
Sometimes what happens, the person comes and he's compromising the innovation. He might even go as far as like acting like it's perfectly fine.
So it's like ta'awun al-birri wa taqwa then.
When you say ta'awun al-birri wa taqwa is of different levels, right?
What can you translate ta'awun al-birri wa taqwa?
When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ, cooperate in good and piety, and do not cooperate in sin and evil. And I always mention this, right? That cooperation can be in a way where sometimes the government, they need everybody to come over from different groups. They've got issues related to the masajid. They need signatures. Okay? This is now a form of cooperation.
Of course.
أليس كذلك?
You're not compromising.
You're not compromising your religion. You're going because that person who works
you're
for the
not
government.
mixing the aqaid.
Exactly.
Right.
That person who works in the government, he looks at all of you guys and you guys are the same. He don't care, akhi. Huh? And all you guys are coming together. You guys need to attend that meeting. You need to sign whatever paper you guys need to sign. And you have to show a united front on that issue.
Right.
So that's one form of ta'awun. And there is nothing wrong with that because there is a bigger mafasid at stake here.
Of course.
Imagine, akhi, all the masajid, if you don't come to this meeting, all the masajid are going to be closed down, or there's issues related to niqab or hijab or whatever have you. And what's being taught in the schools to our youngsters. You're going to attend, akhi.
Right.
I've attended that in the past as well.
Yeah.
But then you have cooperation on a da'wah level. Akhi, is this possible, Mohammed? Let's be fair here, right? I'm calling to Tawheed, I'm calling to the Sunnah, and you've got a guy next to me sitting on the same panel. He's calling to bid'ah and he's calling to, it's okay for you now to call on to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam when you visit his grave, when you go to Medina. أخي هذا نقيضان لا يجتمعان. These are two opposites that they just don't come together, right? And this kind of cooperation, of course, akhi, is batil. This is now mixing with.
I'll tell you a story, okay, of my own self. When I was doing some postgraduate research in SOAS University, okay, and there was one lecturer that I had who was
lecturing you.
Yeah, he was a PhD holder, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he's basically in my opinion, a zindiq. Okay, I know that's a very harsh statement to make, but he's basically, يعني not.
Explain to the people zindiq means.
He's a heretic.
Yeah.
يعني it's bid'ah mukaffira. It's something that takes you out of the fold.
Out of the fold of Islam. Okay.
So he was spouting that on a daily basis. Okay, he was zindiq, and he was just disguising it in Islamic jargon and stuff like that.
Now, was he like a non-Muslim or was he like a Muslim?
He was a Muslim name. He claimed to Islam.
He has an appearance of
Islam. Yeah.
Okay.
Now remember, the class that we were in was a mix of Muslims and non-Muslims.
Okay.
So this is a da'wah thing, right? In a sense, because when he's now making akhta that all the Muslims agree upon, okay, it's upon us, the people in the class who were a mix. There were Salafis in the class, there were Deobandis in the class, and there were Brelvis in the class. Yeah, all three were in that class. It's upon us to show a united front so that the non-Muslims can see this is something outside of anything that any Muslim has ever said. Does that make sense? So clearly, in that situation, it's a kind of ta'awun. It was mutual. It wasn't even something which we all came together and said, let's sign a document of ta'awun or something like that. But it was just that, yeah, I agree with what he's saying here. Yeah, I agree with, and this is a kind of ta'awun, okay, in a sense. And what I'm trying to say is that it's always contextual. The person who is Brelvi might believe in istighatha bin Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, he might believe in this, just like Suyuti and Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, and many of the big scholars did, right? And they had ta'awul for this. But
when you say istighatha, do you mean tawassul?
No, istighatha, they believe in istighatha. They believe in istighatha, Ya Mohammed, yeah, and no one kicked them out.
No, but when you say Ya Mohammed, it's not always what you call it, a form of istighatha.
Yeah,
it's muhtamal.
Yeah, fair enough. But these subki, okay. Right? That's very clear cut. He actually,
because sometimes what happens is words like istighatha used, but what is intended is a tawassul, but a form that's actually
not tawassul bijah Nabi or something. I'm talking bin Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Many of the big scholars of Islam, because no one's taken the subki out of the fold of Islam. Jama'at Jawama', he's written big usuli tracts and so on. What I'm not trying to say that let's mix the aqaid.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that siyaq there, it was mutually understood by almost everybody in that class. Just tilqa anfusina, that we need to back each other on these, because these hujumat are bigger than this. It's actually bigger because you're putting into the Quran into complete disrepute. You're putting the Prophet ﷺ, his ard was being in question. All of these things, this is, it's a battle between iman and kufr. Like in the clearest and non-ta'wili sense. The people, the brothers and sisters, because they are Muslims, that argue for istighatha from the Brelvi background or for whatever, polemically, they do so within the paradigm. And this is very important. I'm not saying it's justified, or we agree, of course. But what I'm saying is that they still cling to hadith and they still work they still talk Quran and Sunnah. Do you get it? They have the paradigm, the Islamic paradigm.
Yeah.
These people,
Masdar al-Talaqqi.
Masdar al-Talaqqi are the same, right? In a sense. You could argue the aql before naql and all
I think people might not understand that word in maybe a reference where we take our religion from.
The textual references are the same. Whereas the progressives, and this is when we talk progressive Muslims, there's a whole, like I can even mention them by name, and Naimi, I think his name is, Amin al-Wudud, and these individuals, they've left the paradigm. Okay, and this is in these spaces, and this is a space that I think many people in Dawah, I'm not aware of, the academic space. This is the battle. The battle is between the progressives and the traditionalists. And they put traditionalists all in one box. Like for us, the Salafis and the Brelvis and the Deobandis, they don't care about that. Because Masail Istighatha,
they're tackling the core of the religion.
Because the thing is, what they want to change is al-akhlaqiyat. They want to change our morals. Do you see the point? And by and large, the Brelvi and the Deobandi and the Salafi, all three of them have this very similar practices. They'll pray 5 times a day. They'll wear niqab.
Make sure you're a bit specific because it could totally.
I'm not talking about istighatha here, but I'm talking about visible practices
like a salah, zakat, siyam, and things like hajj.
Yeah, of course, hajj and so on. Yeah, and even halal and haram. Take this mas'ala away of which there's clear disagreement on. No one's going to lie about that.
Any things that are basically above the surface that the kuffar they see.
Like for example, exactly. Yeah, so visible practices. So for them, I mean, do you think that these progressive Muslims, or those who put them in their place, I would call them the colonial masters, they don't care if you believe in istighatha or not istighatha. To be honest, all they want to do is they change the akhlaqiyat. Now, I'm not suggesting this is not an important topic. Okay, I'm not suggesting. I want to make this very clear. I'm not suggesting that there should not be those debates and those refutations.
Because we're talking about Islam and kufr here. If you
Yeah,
believe,
yeah. If someone believes shirk,
which is shirk billah azza wa
so
jalla.
this is something which we're not compromising on at all. Yeah,
Alhamdulillah,
very clear. Yeah.
yeah.
However, we need to know which, where to position the gun, in the sense that
in the different cases and in
Right.
situations you find yourself in.
So in this case, I'm talking about
Yeah.
my specific experience here in the universities. Like when you're questioning the existence of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the existence, or they even existed. The Quran is a mazij min kada wa kada, and it's a combination of this. And now we have to. Sorry, but that is actually that's more of an issue. We have to tackle this first, because the kafir who's listening to, or the non-Muslim who's listening to it, is going to think, well, why do I need to join this religion in the first place? They won't even get into the discussion, phase 2 of, okay, what's the hadith say about the istighatha, or Uthman ibn Hunayf, and so on. Do you know what I mean? They don't care about that, and they don't know about that, because their masal talaqi is completely different. So we have to bring them into the fold first, then have these discussions. So that's why I feel like when we say da'wah, we have to be specific, because there are forms of da'wah where, even, like you just said, like for example, hijab or niqab, or sex education in the schools. Do you think that will say Salafi, let's come and
this is something that is attacking
it
Islam
requires a
from its core,
united front.
Yeah.
It does require a united front, and so long as someone who is claiming to be a Muslim, they can work together with other Muslims on it. Even Shia and Sunni, there's some issues that it is for both. Halal meat, for example. Right, in a school, you work in a school, for example, it's a halal meat. Say, this guy, I'm not going to cooperate with him because he's a Shiite, and that would be foolish, especially if you're in a majority Shiite population and you're a Sunni. So you're not going to join the effort of the Shiite, for example, who wants to promote halal meat. So all of this ta'awun, right? And what I'm trying to say is,
but I think we have common grounds in what we're discussing.
Yes.
That a ta'awun is of different cooperating.
Yeah.
And cooperation is of different levels.
Right.
Okay.
And so
I think one
contextual.
thing we need to be very careful here is a way which some of this cooperation can be done without aqaid, the beliefs,
Mixing.
Becoming mixed with one another.
Right.
And then falsehood, and also that which is correct becoming mixed with one another. Okay. And also there being a level of distinction.
Right. So you're saying there's a difference between unity, in a sense, in one, and uniformity. In the sense that we're not coming all together and saying, okay, we want to
basically unite, we want to put aqaid
to the side. Yeah, no one's saying.
You see what I'm saying?
There has to be tamyiz there.
There has to be, of course there has to be tamyiz. How can I be calling to the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam? I'm telling the people, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to Abdullah ibn Abbas, إِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ. When you ask Allah. And then the guy next to me, it's like a conference, we're going to talk about aqidah. I'm coming.
Yeah, that don't make sense.
Do you see what I'm saying?
That makes no sense at all.
Yeah. But of course there has to be a level of, we have to come together.
Right.
This is happening now in the schools related to sex education, what our kids are being taught. And the kuffar are saying, okay, bring your issues forward, this and that.
Right.
And then people from different walks of life, they all have to come together and have discussed this issue.
Exactly. Even Jew.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And of course, it's not logical.
So what do you think of this whole, like you were calling it, kind of this phenomena of التبديعات التسلسلية of
okay, that's the second scenario, or the second part of the question, right? Of guilty by association.
Right.
Okay. And what tends to be thrown around is that statement that is used by the Salaf. من خفيت علينا بدعته لم تخف علينا صحبته. Whoever's bid'ah is hidden from us, then his companionship is not hidden.
Do you know who said this?
I can't remember now from the top of my mind.
Right.
But what I can say to you is that a lot of these statements from books like Sharh al-Sunnah al-Imam al-Barbahari, right? I actually have somebody who preceded me in saying what I'm going to say right now. Sheikh Badr al-Utaybi. Sheikh Badr al-Utaybi came to Birmingham, and he was asked this question about teaching the books like Sharh al-Sunnah al-Imam al-Barbahari. Because in this book you're going to find some very unrestricted statements that can be totally taken out of context. If this is now being taught to a revert, which we've seen happening, right? And you got statements like, if you see somebody with an innovator, ألحقوا به كل بلية, then associate with him every type of evil. Okay? Do not sit with the people of innovation. Indeed, what this is going to cause sickness to your heart, whatever have you. Okay? Yes, they are right statements. They are statements that were mentioned by the Salaf. We don't deny them. But what we need to basically agree with is, who's an innovator? when you paint a picture to the people like we are the saved sect, right? And you have this kind of syndrome of I have a green card, I'm going to Al-Jannah, which we can maybe even touch on in a moment. Okay, and a person begins to think, khalas, I'm sorted. And he begins to forget about al-a'mal al-salih, doing righteous actions. Just because you've called yourself a Salafi or you've adopted that type of way of thinking, that doesn't give you a green card to enter into Al-Jannah. Okay.
And these statements, to be clear, they're not hujjah in the religion. They're not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even we was discussing earlier when we was discussing this issue that is discussed in Surah Al-Fiqh, Hujjat Qawl al-Sahabi.
Right.
Is the statement of a Sahabi hujjah in within itself or not?
It's مختلف فيه, no?
يعني it's from the أدلة مختلف فيها ولكن it's weak يعني for those who actually say we don't. But it's an issue that is discussed in books like روضة الناظر and other books of Usul Fiqh.
Right.
فعلى كل حال, this is not discussion for Usul Fiqh, by the way.
No, but I mean the qawl of, for example.
Yeah, I know exactly. If this is now a
Hanbal,
statement of a companion that's
من باب أولى.
هذا من باب أولى. Yeah. You're right.
قول البربهاري.
Imam al-Barbahari rahimahullah ta'ala, or even somebody who came after the companions. يعني,
yeah. So his qawl is not hujjah in that sense. Yeah.
Something very interesting that Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned, and I think it's important that I mention this here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to put a perspective on his book.
Right.
Look what Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned, right? And Ibn Taymiyyah, don't put him in the same bracket as any other scholar who came after him. And I'm talking about those who are breathing here today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ibn Taymiyyah, as Imam al-Dhahabi said about him, وَلَهُ بَاعٌ طَوِيلٌ فِي مَعْرِفَةِ مَذَاهِبِ الصَّحَابَةِ وَالتَّابِعِينَ. He has in-depth understanding when it comes to knowing the positions of the companions and also the tabi'in. So Imam al-Dhahabi saying this, right? He said, وَكَثِيرٌ كثير وكثير من أجوبة الإمام أحمد وغيره من الأئمة خرج على سؤال سائل يعلم المسؤول حاله. Many of the answers that Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala gave, and those that are like him, with regards to these issues that we're speaking about, right? It came as an answer while the questioner, when he was asking this question, the one being asked the question, like for example, Imam Ahmad, he already knew who was talking about. For example, in layman's terms, right? So the viewer understands. Like when I was in Al-Yemen, in Damaj, everybody was on the same page there. Everybody was Salafi, everybody was upon, that way of thinking, right? It's like a whole village. Imagine like a whole village. Nobody has a different creedal view than yourself. So you have a teacher that's sitting on the chair. Everybody's attending the class. You used to have like 5,000, 6,000 people attending one class after Asr, and then after Maghrib same, because all the dakakin, the shops have to close down at the time of the lesson. So the Shaykh is asked a question. Okay? And what is he being asked about? An innovator now that has walked into the Maj. Everybody knows that this person is an innovator. The Shaykh is being asked a very general question. Shaykh, what do you say about an individual who sits with the innovator? Everybody knows what the Shaykh is speaking about, or what the questioner is speaking about. So a lot of these answers that are found in books like Sharh al-Sunnah al-Imam al-Barbahari, it was the result of an answer being given after a question like this was asked. So one wants to now read this book. It's translated to him. Even the person who might be teaching, he doesn't know Arabic himself. So he's now translating it, communicating this to all of these attendees. Some of them are reverts. They walk out of the masjid. On the streets of the UK, oh, you're an innovator. I can't sit with you. He was giving him salams before, when in fact that person, he's just like a general person. He stays away from him. His own family members, he stays away from him.
Mom and dad.
Akhi,
husband, wife.
Sheikh Salih al-Suhaimi told these stories when he came to Luton. How a wife boycotted her husband because of some of these internal Salafi type issues, or that which is ascribed back to, you see what I'm saying? Which is, of course, akhi, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I believe this kind of way has really tarnished the da'wah of Salafiyya in general. Okay? Akhi, we know when we say Salafiyya, it means Quran, Sunnah upon the understanding of the early generations. Collectively. not ahad, right? Because the Messenger ﷺ said, خيركم قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. The best of you is my generation, then those who came after and those who came after them. So, to look at Salafiyah today, okay, and basically paint it with one brush because you've run into a certain group of brothers, wallahi, again, it's totally unjust. Am I wrong for saying that, Mohammed, right? You've run into a bunch of brothers who are rough and tough, and all you ever heard from them was them ripping into the people. Okay, even ripping into their own brothers who might be calling to the same thing. Just because they're not calling to Allah under your banner, you've started having a go at them. You know, akhi, this is ajib. It's like Ibn al-Jawzi is sitting with us right now, right? And seeing what's happening around us in the UK. He mentioned something very powerful. He said, وَمِن تَلْبِيسِ إِبْلِيسَ عَلَى أَهْلِ الْحَدِيثِ قَدْحُ بَعْضِهِمْ فِي بَعْضٍ طَلَبًا لِلتَّشَفِّي. From the deceptions of Iblis upon the people of Hadith is them insulting and criticizing one another. And what are they trying to do here? They're trying to, what's the best way to put this? They rejoice over the downfall of others. And this is all under the banner, he says, يخرجون ذلك مخرج الجرح والتعديل.
Allah, subhanallah.
Yeah, and they do this under the banner of al-jarh wa ta'dil, and we hear about this all the time, right? Jarh wa ta'dil. This is a science that is studied in ilm al-hadith, where the scholars of the past, like Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Ahmad, they would criticize the narrators in order to protect the Sharia.
Now
so look what he says.
The same thing with the awam.
Yeah. So he says, يخرجون ذلك مخرج الجرح والتعديل الذي استعمله قدماء هذه الأمة للذب عن الشريعة. What the scholars of the past they use, this field that they use in order to protect the Sharia.
Subhanallah.
You see what I'm saying?
Subhanallah.
So akhi, it's like
I heard something Sheikh Fawzan actually, he was saying that people that do this, that these are two separate fields. That you shouldn't impose jarh wa ta'dil ala.
يعني jarh wa ta'dil is a field.
Yeah, for the hadith.
Again, warning the people from innovation again is something that the religion calls to, right? But akhi, wallahi, you go to certain gatherings, it's as if they have their own tahdhib al-tahdhib.
Exactly.
Tahdhib al-tahdhib as in, it has all the names in there. 50 guys, akhi, are being thrown onto the floor, akhi. They're being, thrown under the rug. This person's offered, this person's offered, this person's offered.
And this is a cancerous trait.
Let me make this very clear.
SubhanAllah.
Warning is bid'ah and its people. I mentioned all the cause of Ibn Taymiyyah
very
earlier.
important.
It is part of our religion.
Yes.
You do it with the atheists, you do it with others as well.
Right.
We do it as well. It is part of our religion.
Right.
But akhi, it has to be done in a fair way.
It has to be done.
It has to be done
by the right people, not someone who
by the
doesn't
right people as
know
well.
Arabic language and doesn't know how to communicate or read. Right.
Ajib, when he said they do it under the banner of al-jarh wa ta'dil, I asked myself the question: is Ibn al-Jawzi looking at what's happening in the UK?
Allahu Akbar.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's passed away how many hundred years ago, akhi?
Subhanallah. But to many of these brothers, maybe Ibn Jawzi be off the manhaj.
Huh? Maybe so, akhi. Even akhi, I've heard things like Ibn Taymiyyah, and I'm not going to mention that sheikh's name. It was actually Abdurrahman Hassan who told me this, right? He was in the gathering. And Abdurrahman Hassan, and may Allah reward the brother, right? One thing that he opened my eyes up to is the books of Ibn Taymiyyah. Because when I first came back from Damaj, I was given a very hard time. Very hard time. So much so, and in fact, I can actually relate to what Yasir Qadhi is saying at the beginning of your podcast when he talks about some of the difficulties and issues that he went through, right? I can fully relate to that. And I've seen in Medina, maybe this is something we're going to discuss, the amount of trouble I've been given in the last 4 years just being in Medina. So when I left after spending time in Yemen and I came back, I was given a very hard time. So much so, akhi, that I began to think, akhi, is this what deen of Allah Azza wa Jal is? When I ran into some of these brothers, akhi, the way they were treating me, and this was being used under the banner of as-Salafiyah. This is the way of the Salaf. As-Salafiyah is this. Okay, as-Salafi is a noble thing. It's not what I think or what you think, Mohammed, or what my sheikh thinks or what your sheikh thinks. It is the way of the three golden generations. Do you see what I'm saying? Their understanding collectively. Until I actually met the likes of Shaykh Abu Sama. And also Abu Abbas Naveed, and later on I ended up meeting Abdurrahman Hassan. And the common feature amongst us all is that we was oppressed by the same group of people. And we were made to look that what we're doing is against the way of the Salaf.
Even if you repent or retract,
yes.
it's not
all of that stuff.
Not good enough.
فعلى كل حال, what happened was, Abdurrahman Hassan said to me, Akhi, open your eyes up to the books of Ibn Taymiyyah. So one thing he said to me was, he was in the house of one of these mashayikh. Should I mention the sheikh's name? Just maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, don't have to.
Yeah, huh?
You don't have to.
Yeah, let's just leave it, inshallah. He's one of the prominent of their mashayikh, right? And he said to him, Sheikh, look, I have these statements of Ibn Taymiyyah. Like, where am I going wrong? Ibn Taymiyyah is saying this about boycotting. أنه يختلف باختلاف الهاجرين. The exact wording that he uses, right? That it depends. You can't just boycott everybody. And all the other statements that he collected, he took to the Sheikh. You know Sheikh said to him? Ibn Taymiyyah khalif al-ijma'. Ibn Taymiyyah has gone against the unanimous agreement. And I found that shocking. I struggled to really believe that. I later on had discussions with some of our mashayikh in Damaj. I even went to Shaykh al-Hajuri. Okay, one of the things that I get criticized for being with Shaykh al-Hajuri, Shaykh Yahya taught me. I spent 4 years in Yemen, right? And I took to him, I was like, Shaykh, kada wa kada wa kada. I don't need to discuss now on camera what exactly I discussed. This is a tilmid, a student, going up to his Shaykh and Shaykh saying, what about this and what about this, what about that? How do we deal with these issues of pictures and whatnot, that, and these, you know, and ala kulli hal, yeah, I just never, after I left and I started opening my eyes up to Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim and Ibn al-Jawzi, Ibn Rajab, I just like, this doesn't make sense. This is not a productive way of dealing with problems of the people. And akhi, is, of course, it's more safer to take the position of the scholars of the past. فَإِنَّ الْحَيَّ لَا يُؤْمَنُ عَلَيْهِ الْفِتْنَةِ. The one who's living, he's not free from any fitna. So we have the classical scholars all saying this. It's like Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Jawzi, Ibn al-Qayyim. They're living amongst us today. They've dealt with our problems, with how to deal with these issues, right? And I think that's more than sufficient, akhi. Yeah.
What would you say now, probably as a final statement to about all of the things? Obviously, you're one of the people who you're very close to, Abdurrahman Hassan, you're very close to Imran ibn Nasr Nawaman, and you're very close to some of those brothers, and I think they respect and love you, and I think you feel the same way with them as well. Yeah, and more so.
I still work with Knowledge College. I teach course. I just literally finished now.
What kind of, what collectively you've come to the conclusion? First of all, individually, you came to the conclusion that, you know, the kind of stance you took with that Shia incident with Sheikh Haitham that was an oppressive one, and the Tabdi'ah was not a good idea, but maybe we should calm down a bit with Tabdi'ah. What would you think that would sway the other brothers to come to a similar conclusion to you?
Akhi, like I mentioned, akhi, al-insafu aziz. Sometimes you got to put your emotions to the side, past incidents to the side, and just think about your akhirah, akhi. Let me mention this narration of Umar ibn Khattab. Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, of course, he was the Khalifa of the Muslims, right? A man came up to him, يشكو إليه لمن أو يشكو إليه على شخص ظلمه. He came to complain about somebody who oppressed him. You know what Umar ibn Khattab said to him? He said to him, تتركون الخليفة حين يكون فارغا وتأتون إذا شغل بأمر المسلمين. You leave the Khalifa, you don't come to the Khalifa, meaning himself, when he's free, but you come to him when he becomes busy with the affairs of the Muslims. You know what Umar Khattab done? He took a whip, فضربه بالدرة. It's like, you know, one thing that you lash people with, right? فخرج الرجل حزين. The man ended up leaving the place while he was upset. So Umar ibn Khattab, you know, the type of individual he was, who would always, you know, hold himself to account. He's the one that said, حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل تحاسبوا. Hold yourself to account before that day comes, you're held to account. He contemplated upon what he done. And he asked somebody to bring that man again. When he was brought, he gave him the whip. Goes, whip me. And the man said, no. تركت حقي لله ولك. I've left my right with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I've left it with you. Umar said, no. Choose one of the two. Okay, no worries. I'm going to leave it with Allah. And then the man left. Umar was so upset, was so down. He walked into his house, prayed 2 rak'at, and then he just burst into tears. And he said these very beautiful statements about himself. He said, Ya Umar, كنت وضيعا فرفعك الله. You was very low, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised you. Okay. وكنت ضالا فهداك الله. You was misguided and Allah Azza wa Jal guided you. فجعلك الله عز وجل خليفة للمسلمين. Allah made you the Khalifa of the Muslim. فجاءك الرجل يستعين بك على رجل ظلمه فظلمته. A man came to you in order to seek your assistance, right? Instead of helping him, you ended up oppressing him. ما تقول لربك إذا أتيته غدا. What are you going to say to your Lord when you come to him tomorrow? Yeah. So I think we as Muslims, forget about the dua, just as Muslims, we need to have this constant habit of, before we go to sleep, we just think about everything that we said. Akhi, we forget what we said tomorrow, what we said yesterday. Am I wrong, Akhi? Like this constant habit of, before I go to sleep, I just think about, I take a moment or two out, close my eyes, everything that I said, right? That which I said about so and so, that which I said about this individual. Because Akhi is all gonna come, you know. Something also that I read in Sirah Alam al-Nubala, Al-Asma'i mentioned is that أوصى سفيان الثوري أن تدفن كتبه. He wrote in his will that his books are to be buried. وكان ندم على أشياء كتبها عن قوم. He regretted some of the things that he said about others inside of this book. Akhi, he wrote a whole book, Akhi. He wrote a whole book. What he said about this person, what he said about that person. But look at his humility, Akhi. He was down to earth and humble enough to just admit the mistake. Okay? I remember, John asked me this question, do you believe that you have changed when you went to Medina? I don't necessarily think I could call it change. It's just maybe more so when you sit around the scholars and you see the way they just, how can I put this in a very nice way, where they just really just lighten down something that is very huge upon the nafs, the soul of a person. For example, now, retracting is not an easy thing, right? This thing that I'm doing, Akhi, I've been thinking about it for so long. Wallahi al-Azim, for the last 4 years, it was brought to my attention. I've been thinking about it even more so in the last 2 years, and even more so in the last month. Yeah? It's not an easy thing. These brothers are very beloved to you, and sometimes to say something that might be in negative light, it can be very difficult, Akhi. And I really, really, really hope, Akhi, that what Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned doesn't happen to us. When he said, وَالنَّاسُ إِذَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ أَبْغَضَ بَعْضُهُم بَعْضًا. When the people, they start cooperating in sin and evil, they will begin to hate one another. Okay? And like when you see some of these mashayikh, like, let me give you guys an example of Shaykh al-Abbad, Shaykh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, the muhaddith of Medina, right? Who taught the books of, the 6 books of hadith in like 28 years, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on the years. And he's then started teaching the books again. He's maybe in his early 90s or late 80s. You can just quickly do a Google check and you'll find this, right? How many times have I heard him say, this is the muhaddith of Medina. He is like the scholar of the scholars in the haram. How many times have I heard him say, Allahu A'lam? And I don't even study with him. The only time I've studied with him was, like, I finished a book with him, Nukhbatul Fikr. This was recently when he taught it, before he started teaching the Muwatta of Imam Malik. How do I know this? Sometimes when I leave my halaqah, I just basically stand there and I'm listening to the Q&As. And I said, Allahu A'lam, la adri, Allahu A'lam, la adri. And sometimes he would even give a fatwa and he'll retract it later on. Like one of the fatwas that he recently gave with regards to the coronavirus, about, you know how you pray in the haram, how they're praying, where there's a distance between each musalli? Huh? He gave the fatwa and he said, this is no, like you can't do this. And then later on when the Lajna spoke about it, he retracted his statement. Shaykh Abdul Razak al-Badr, somebody who's very dear to my heart, right? And I'm just giving you guys a couple of examples of some of these mountains today who are teaching in the most honorable place in the world. Obviously, you have the Kaaba and you have Al-Medina as well. There was a class where he was teaching us just after Maghrib. He was quoting the verses and he was trying to make a point about Tawheed and Sunnah. وَيَوْمَ يُنَادِيهِمْ فَيَقُولُ أَيْنَ شُرَكَائِيَ الَّذِينَ كُنْتُمْ تَزْعُمُونَ. He mentioned that ayah, right? Then he mentioned the other ayah that's just on the next page, when Allah said وَيَوْمَ يُنَادِيهِمْ فَيَقُولُ مَاذَا أَجَبْتُمُ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. That's basically the ayah, right? Akhi Mohammed, when he mentioned the ayah, I've never heard the ayah before. He mentioned it in a way that is not in the Quran. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Now you're gonna get refuted.
No, it wasn't even.
Hold on, David was making a video already now.
Yeah. It was very unintentional, and it happens to us sometimes. Yeah. We might misquote an ayah, right? I'm sitting in the class. I'm actually like suspecting myself. Did you even memorize Surah Al-Qasas? Like, I'm asking myself. And then the Sheikh left. Akhi, next lesson. After obviously saying Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu was. Because yesterday I made a mistake. I was trying to quote an ayah, but I completely misquoted it. When you think about it, is this actually really difficult for them? I don't believe it's difficult for them. When you come to realization that those who are far greater than you, from the look at Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Abu Hurairah was not like any other companion. I'm going to conclude with this, right? Abu Hurairah, he was the top when it comes to the hadith that he memorized. Even Hafid al-Iraqi, what did he say in his Alfiyah? وَالْمُكْثِرُونَ فِي رِوَايَةِ الْأَثْرِ أَبُو هُرَيْرَةِ لِي ibn Umar. Abu Hurairah was the top, then Abdullah ibn Umar. Abdurrahman ibn al-Harith comes to him. Abdurrahman ibn al-Harith doesn't ring a bell to most people. But you say Abu Hurairah, everybody knows him. The Sunnis know him, the Shiites know him as well. And they've got their observations on this great, wonderful companion, right? But Abdurrahman ibn al-Harith is one of them companions that didn't memorize anywhere near what they did. He came up to him and he said to him, Akhi, you made a mistake. Abu Hurairah used to give the fatwa that if the adhan of Fajr goes off, right, and you're in the state of janaba, whether it was because of relations or whether you had a wet dream, you can't fast that day. And he gave this fatwa for a very long time, until Abdurrahman ibn al-Harith came out and he said, I had Aisha and Salama, both of them saying that what you're saying is incorrect. They're basically saying the opposite. Look at his response. He didn't turn around and say, Akhi, like I am Abu Hurairah, I've memorized X amount of a hadith. He said to him, Ahuma qalatah. Did they really say this? Idhan huma a'lamu minni. If that is the case, they are more knowledgeable than me with regards to this issue. And he retracted his statement. Even Sheikh Faisal Jassim recently retracted some things that he mentioned with regards to this whole coronavirus. Akhi, وَمَا تَوَاضَ أَحَدٌ لِلَّهِ إِلَّا رَفَعَهُ, right? So it's important, Akhi, that we just kind of like accept it. We swallow the ego and we bite our tongues and just, and Akhi, what you did basically in the video as always is very highly respectable, and
Which one?
when you basically said that you said he was mistaken, it's Akhi, it takes a man to do that, right?
I've done that. I've had so many retractions, brother. That's because of my ignorance.
And the other thing is, and I think it's important that we discuss this is.
And by the way, it disarms people as well. Like when you've made a mistake and it's clear for the majority to see at least, and it's a mistake. I've made many of them, as people know. Like I've made videos about my mistakes. Mohammed Hijab Exposed. I made a couple of videos.
I've never watched them.
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
So, but I was gonna say is that, it's just disarms people because you want your record to be clean as possible, and you're going to be making mistakes, especially at a young age. You're going to be making mistakes. So, what's the fuss about? You can just get it out of the way and kind of move on.
Yeah, it's something that universally happens with everybody. Mr. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Kullu bani adam khata." He never said khati.
Right.
Sighatul mubalagh. He said all the time making mistakes.
Yeah.
وَخَيْرُ الْخَطَّائِينَ التَّوَّابُونَ. The best of those who repent. Sometimes, أخي, you seek more knowledge. Even Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, الرجل كلما اتسع علمه اتسعت رحمته. The more you increase in knowledge, you become more merciful, right?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And you really tend to think about things more, and there's no harm, akhi. You make mistakes. Even Sheikh Abu Sama says to me all the time, akhi, that he made, he used to say things like telling everybody that you have to all make hijrah, it's wajib, and as soon as he came back and all of them, they were on it. But then you kind of like, the more you give da'wah, you kind of mature through it. And when you see some of your elders saying this, akhi, see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think it's also very, very important that we touch on this is, just because I take a view, it's not fair that my brother who I may have been seen with, okay, is painted with the same brush.
And vice versa.
And obviously this is exactly what's happened now. I never made tabdi', and now I've been seen. And I totally understand why a person would think that.
Yeah.
And even now, akhi, just right after this video, people are going to be what?
Yeah, me and you don't agree with everything. So.
And this is how I've always been with my brother Imran, Abdurrahman likewise, and even yourself, akhi. When we met up in Hajj, I'm not your teacher, we've had discussions, right? Have you ever felt like I'm enforcing my view, akhi? And if you don't take my view, akhi, I'm gonna declare you to be an innovator or anything like that?
Nah, I've seen that.
We sat for how many years? What? Two Hajjs we jumped into, and we sat down and we talked and we exchanged, advices, and you told me some things that I did and I took it with a pinch of salt and I thought about it, and it was one of the things that we discussed as well, right? And I told you stuff as well. And even with Imran, like, I'm not his teacher, okay? Even with some of the brothers that I teach, I don't think I'm the type of person who enforces his views. I have this rough and tough mentality. If you don't take my view, I'm gonna throw you off, or I'm gonna boycott you, or whatever have you, right? It's been done to me before. Somebody said to me, bro, if you don't leave this, I'm gonna boycott you. Like, akhi, go do whatever you want, akhi. Like, I never started doing da'wah with you, and at the end of the day, akhi, it's been said to me, so I know how he feels. And I've seen people's relationship, like a teacher-student relationship, get a bit frosty as well because of the pushy, roughy type of way that one was trying to get maybe his message across. And I seen it doesn't go down nicely. So my position with everybody is, bro, this is my view. If you want to take it, it's entirely up to you. Okay? And I'll just advise the person. And because I've advised him now, does that mean I'm going to boycott him? I'm going to stop doing da'wah with him? Al-jawabu la. And some people want that. You see what I'm saying? Just because you've differed with so-and-so, they want you to differ. Okay, I've differed with him. Khalas, boycott him. I don't think that's a productive way to kind of like really go forward as well. And some people have like ultra motives as well and everything,
And I think that attitude is, especially in the Salafi Muslim community, those who attribute themselves to Salafiyah. If everyone that attributed themselves to Salafiyah had this kind of attitude, wallahi, I think we would have more productive and more, effective da'wah as a Muslim community as a whole. And so I want to Jazakumullah, thank you for coming on to this podcast. I think it's been extremely productive. And
again, let me just point out before this gets misconstrued as well, right? There is issues that go back to a person's ijtihad. Okay? And there's some issues, akhi, that is credo type matters, and we're not discussing this at the moment. We're speaking about other personal ijtihadi issues. A person like wants to maybe do something, I might disagree with him of how he goes to do a particular thing. Just because I don't agree with him, that doesn't mean I'm going to boycott him or throw him off. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of the time you see that it goes back to these issues. That you find people calling this individual an innovator or this and that. It tends to come back to these kind of things, isn't it?
And I think you're a living example of someone who starts off with a certain kind of approach, and then the more reading, the more knowledge, the more nuance, the more sophisticated you become. And Jazakumullah khairan for sharing your thoughts. I think many of the things you've said people would resonate with and find really productive. So Jazakumullah khairan.
Jazakallah khair.
And for those watching, inshallah, you can we're going to try and put these podcasts on one of the streams like iTunes or something like that. We'll see how it goes. This is the 4th podcast, the Mohammed Hijab podcast, inshallah. Maybe comment on who you'd like to see on a future podcast. We're trying to bring people from different backgrounds, different specialities, different experiences. So just let us know, inshallah. Wa jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.